That's bumping right there. Is this new? Welcome in to the Yahoo edition of the Deeper Dive. Just letting that beat ride, man. That's new to me. It may not be new to you out there. Jordan is producing. More importantly, Matt's in the house, Matt LaMarca, and he is going to help you and me build a winning ticket when it comes to everything on this 9-game NBA slate, powered for the next half hour by Yahoo. That's where we'll be. So if you're with us already, we appreciate you. Hit those 2 links below. We'll talk a little bit more about that when you can take advantage with Yahoo. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe. We just want to let you know the big version across the board coming up in a half hour. But for the next 30 minutes, we have you covered with Yahoo. Always a pleasure. Now I can say that now it's our second time because 2 times in a row. It's a pleasure, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. We were just conversing about the Wild West known as New Jersey and how basically you can just do whatever you want there. And then vibing out to some thumping beats from Jordan.
Look at that.
I gotta say, the music has been just the most pleasant surprise of being here so far.
Right. They didn't tell you that ahead of time, right? They
No,
kind of stuck that in there. And who would have thought to ask, right? Real quick, salary's great. Content is great. What you're asking from me is great, but do you play shitty music before each stream? Because that's an out for me, right?
You got to be selective, man.
Exactly right, my friend. All right, so we're going to jump into it, bounce around position by position, but I am curious because there is some big news right here in Philadelphia, clearly with Joel Embiid being out, but just overall, how you're looking at this, a little bit more of a slate than we had last time around, so a little bit more flexibility that we can use, especially if there is a pivot. So what are you looking at tonight, Matt, is just as far as your overall strategy with this specific slate? And also we have the Embiid news in the background.
Yep. And the Embiid news is huge. Just a little bit of drama to start the year in Philadelphia from a basketball perspective. But yeah, they're going to give him the night off, which it makes sense. He hasn't really looked like the Joel Embiid that we've become accustomed to seeing. So give him some time off, let him get healthy. I think that's the right decision, but that opens up some value, certainly with Andre Drummond, who's going to be the mega chalk across the industry, and with good reason. But we've also got some other injury news to monitor too. Marant is questionable with an elbow injury. And then the Pacers have Malcolm Brogdon and Karis LeVert questionable. So some big injuries to monitor. As far as just like overall strategy, I'm normally most interested in a stars and scrubs build on Yahoo because I feel like there are normally some strong guys that you can play that are going to be, $10 to $15 in that price range. I think we certainly have some options to choose from on tonight's slate. So, and there are plenty of good guys to pay up for, including, Nikola Jokic all the way up at the top, who is arguably having an even better season than he did last year.
I know we're going to end with the center spot and start at the point guard specifically. And there are 2 guys, as you mentioned, from Marant to Brogdon that we have to hit on from an injury standpoint. But just as far as a general question, without even being specific to maybe Karl Anthony Towns or Boucher or anybody else really on the slate as a 5, how much does Embiid being out influence how much you're going to get to Jokic specifically tonight?
It'll definitely reduce my Jokic ownership a little bit, but I do think that, having the utility spot on Yahoo means I can play 2 centers. And I don't think there's much of a question that Jokic is the top stud on the slate and that Drummond is the top value. So pairing those 2 guys together is going to be popular. I would expect that combination to carry, plenty of ownership, but that's a combination that I certainly want to have a lot of tonight.
All right, let's jump in with the point guard spot. And again, we are factoring in injury and also with Matt's strategy of building a stars and scrubs lineup here. More people popping in. Hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. See that little bell next to the subscribe button so you don't stroll in late and you're getting there right away from overall strategy with everything Matt has to say. And maybe even a little back and forth. Maybe you're here for the back and forth at the start of the show as well. You don't want to miss that. All right, let's look at, and again, we have to factor in injury and game time decision. You keep everything going on through our deeper dive at the top of the hour, right through live before lock. But looking at this spot specifically, how are you factoring in not really having a definitive answer yet on two guys who are pretty high price when it comes to the slate?
Yeah, the Marant news, will affect some of the value plays there. Like, we've used DeAnthony Melton and Desmond Bane all year kind of anyway. So they would definitely get boosts if he's ruled out, and they'll probably be players that, I'm going to be building into my lineups so that I'm ready if he does get ruled out. And then for the Pacers, TJ McConnell, he hasn't really come through for us in the last two games, but he's played 33 minutes in both of them, at least 33 minutes. We know what kind of producer this guy can be on a per minute basis. So he would become one of the best values on the slate if the two Pacer guards are ruled out.
The thing about Lillard is I just don't know when you think the breakout is coming and when to get ahead of it. I also, right, and then combine it with the matchup here tonight, where I can imagine that if Doc Rivers has his choice, he's going to put Matisse Thybulle out on Lillard more so than McCollum, especially to kind of just erase Lillard entirely for a guy who's struggling and deal with McCollum maybe, and we'll get to CJ in a minute, but deal with a guy maybe going for 30, 35 on you and coming at it from that standpoint. I saw you shaking your head, so maybe you're partial to that theory as well, which would really eliminate a lot of Damian Lillard tonight, right?
It's a good strategy. It makes a lot of sense when you lay it out to me, but I still want Damian Lillard.
Okay. Well, let's look at this then. How often and much do you anticipate getting to him to the field?
Yeah. Right now, we have him projected for 6.2% on Yahoo. So you don't have to be a lot to be overweight on him. I think I'm going to have about 20%, I would imagine. But the numbers are coming, right? The minutes have come back. He played 37.8 minutes in his last game. But he shot terribly. 5 for 20 from the field, 2 for 14 from 3-point range. Damian Lillard is going to make shots eventually. I am not worried about that. So will it happen tonight against the 76ers? I don't know. Certainly Thybulle would be a very tough matchup if that's what the 76ers coaching staff decides to throw at him for most of the game. But I just think he's too talented of a player to keep shooting this way. And I don't want to miss the game. I don't want to miss the game when he goes off, especially now that the price tag has come down a bit from the start of the season. So I think Lillard is somebody to be overweight on in tournaments.
I understand the FOMO with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? With everything pushing, all the crypto commercials and everything else right now, people are sky high on not wanting to miss out on anything. So I understand that by all means. And I think that the element of the strategy there, and we'll talk about it coming at the 2 spot, but it will be interesting to see just how the approach will be to Lillard, who you mentioned is getting the volume of shots, but the woes are still there as well. Anybody that you're looking at from anyone else, I should say, that you're looking at from a super low cost or maybe even more of a value option before we look at the 2s?
I think Reggie Jackson at $20 is a pretty appealing play. He struggled in his last game, but that's a good price tag for him. He's expected to be somewhat popular tonight. We have him projected around 23% ownership, but he's somebody that I think can certainly provide some value at his price tag there. And if you want to go, super cheap, if you're looking for a real punt play, we have Patrick Beverly grading out as one of the best values at the position. He's at the absolute minimum. So he's questionable right now, but he has been playing roughly 21, 22 minutes per game, and he's been getting us more than a fantasy point per minute on Yahoo. So he's somebody that I think you can look at the absolute minimum.
All right, let's hit the shooting guard spot. And again, with Yahoo, we have the guard, we have the forward, we have the utility, as Matt mentioned as well. And speaking of which, look, hit those links below. We have a couple of things here for you, including just $10, 10 free dollars on Yahoo to mess around with and use at your own discretion. Hopefully you're following along with what Matt's saying so that you can apply all of the insight to it. And then also, if you're new to Yahoo, you're still figuring out what to do here. We keep telling you, Matt keeps telling you specifically, and look, take somebody with a track record about how maneuverable and easy it is to win on Yahoo. So click that link. You get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up with your first deposit and contest entry. We talk, I know, about the other sites a lot on site here, but you've mentioned this a couple of times on our show where there's a lot of strong flexibility for the player on Yahoo.
Yeah, I like Yahoo quite a bit. I think that there's a nice edge to be had there. There's, like values that maybe aren't available on some of the other sites. So yeah, I think if it's a very nice option to add into your DFS portfolio.
All right, so the 2 spot now becomes interesting. You mentioned Caris LeVert. Let's start there. He's at $30 tonight for Yahoo. How do you let's assume that we get news in the next hour or so that LeVert's a go. What are you doing first and foremost with him, with the assumption that he is playing?
Yeah, he's a pass. I mean, even if he plays, he only saw 15 and a half minutes in his first game. They're going to build him back into the rotation slowly. So we don't really have to worry about him being an option for us. It's more that his absence would make the other guys on the team a little bit more appealing. So we can definitely just cross him off, though.
Fair enough, my friend. And I am curious about CJ here with the approach. If you are rostering Damian Lillard, is how often do you think you're getting to backcourts with both of these guys?
I wouldn't do that most nights. These two players are pretty negatively correlated. When one does well, it tends to take away from what the other one does. So unless you're building like a full-on game stack where you're expecting this to be a high scoring back and forth affair, I'm not really looking to pair those guys up. So if you're not playing Lillard, which I admit it's a viable strategy, and you do, like, if you want to play the Matisse Thybulle narrative that he's going to shut down Lillard, then McCollum does become a somewhat interesting pivot off of him. But I think that's kind of the way that these two guys are used best, is it's an either or type situation.
I appreciate you being a little nicer on that response than our guy in the chat here, Mr. Burner. I think it was Dean's Burner, basically calling me crazy, fading Lillard. I wasn't saying don't play him at all, but look, Thybulle over the past 3 games, he's up to 60, right around 60 minutes, 8 steals, 5 blocks. My point being is that if they don't have Ben Simmons. So that was probably something I should have mentioned in my point about it, which is normally you have the luxury of getting 25, 26 minutes from Thybulle and putting him on the guy that Simmons isn't guarding. You don't have Simmons, and I think what they've shown is that they can put Thybulle on one guy, take him out, or try to take him out. That was it, just to clarify, so that not everybody, including Matt, thinks I'm just batshit crazy, which I think you're getting to that conclusion, and that's
no. Hey, that's solid logic.
All right, so overall on the slate, if it doesn't look, and this is just how unless you're getting to Fred VanVleet, right? It doesn't look like it's worth paying up considerably for somebody at the 2 spot. And if we're building a stars and scrubs, this may be the first opportunity to go super cheap.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Edwards is projected to catch some ownership here. We have him at 24%, but I don't think he's somebody I'm particularly interested in at 33. I think going down to Jalen Suggs, who we have at $18 here on Yahoo, I think that makes a lot of sense. Suggs has been inconsistent to start the year. There's no doubt about that, but the usage rate is there. He does some peripheral stuff. He's getting rebounds, he's getting assists, and he's shown the ability to get points without making a ton of shots, which is something that I love, right? He had 32 in his last game versus the Pistons. He was 3 for 13 from the field. If you can get 32 without making any shots on nights where your shot is falling, it's going to give you, that 40-point type upside that we want to see.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially if you can counter ownership with that for some leverage.
Yes. I mean, Suggs we have him projected 3rd at the position in ownership, but I think it's too cheap of a price tag when you consider his role with the team and the amount of minutes that he's playing. Somebody that we have like DeAnthony Melton, right? He's more expensive than Suggs, and Melton's a good player. He would become appealing to me if Marant is out, but in a vacuum, we kind of expect Suggs to be the better player there, right? So I can get him for a little bit cheaper. Duarte, who we've been riding early in the season, he's more expensive than Suggs. I just think 18 is too cheap to pass up.
Speaking of which, is there any, not even concern so much, but are you still riding? And I guess it's slate dependent, right? But Duarte's price increasing may make him less appealing, right?
Yeah, I think this is about where he's supposed to be priced. When we were getting him earlier in the year, he was at the minimum, near the minimum. Now that he's up at 19, he has returned value the last 2 games, but it's been right there. He hasn't had any of that wiggle room. So I don't think he should be a particularly popular play. We haven't projected at 6% ownership, but that feels right to me. Unless we get that Pacers value that opens up, right? If there's more shots available than normal, then possibly we can go back to Duarte. But other than that, I don't think he's necessarily providing as much value as he did early in the year.
There really isn't anybody in that Suggs range, and I'd use Suggs as a ceiling here. There really isn't anybody from like that 18 to maybe even down to like that $12 range before you just get into that $10 punt. And I don't know if Neto even jumps out at that, but there really, like Seth Curry, I can't even make an argument because for $2 more, you get, I would think, less volatility even in Suggs.
Yeah, I still have interest in Seth Curry though. Without Embiid, like the 76ers do not have a ton of scoring at the moment, right? They have Tobias Harris.
Right.
He's going to be asked to do plenty, but Curry's increased his usage rate by 7.5% with Embiid off the court this season. And he is averaging a pretty nice fantasy total on a per minute basis. He ups his fantasy scoring to, sorry, this is enthralling television, 1.19 fantasy points per minute.
Numbers help. So we're all patient with you.
1.19 fantasy points per minute. That's pretty darn good. Yeah. So I definitely have some appeal for him. And he is going to be not at all as popular as Suggs, right? We haven't projected for around 4%. I bet that comes up a little bit, but still he's going to be a nice pivot if you want to get away from some of the chalkier options.
All right, let's move to the 3 spot. Again, we'll hit the 3, 4, 5, hit those links below and take full advantage of what we have here with Yahoo, the 10 free dollars. If you're brand new to Yahoo, you can get 1 month of Awesemo Plus Platinum free with your first deposit and contest entry. All we ask in return, hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed here, and you can take advantage of everything we give back. And I agree, Steve Liddy, LaMarca, a great addition to Awesemo. So look at that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know if, are you going to see him at home tonight or?
No, but I'll tell him that the check's in the mail. The check's in the mail, Steve.
That's the other one. It's checks in the mail, and thanks, brother. I'll see you at home. All right, so let's look at the 3 and Paul George right there at the top. So we can start Beal, Brown, but you're not saving a ton really with Beal, although there is a $12 difference with Jaylen Brown. So really, when you look at the productivity or the expected points per game that we're getting from Paul George, fantasy, of course, points per game from Paul George, 47 is not even the most that you would spend tonight with Jokic and Sabonis still hovering. Are you getting the much Paul George based on the salary and also ownership?
Yes, I have some Paul George and I have some Bradley Beal. So I will be paying up for both of the top guys here at small forward. George has displayed a pretty insane ceiling without Kawhi Leonard this season. His usage rate was 43% in his last game. He finished with 42 real points. His usage rate over 30% in every game to start the year. So George is he's emerged, right? He's gone from that level of, like a 1B superstar to now he's full-fledged top flight fantasy guy. So I think 47 is fair to pay for him. And same goes for Bradley Beal at 40. I've been waiting, right? We've all been kind of waiting, I think, for the Bradley Beal breakout, and he's done it the last 2 times out, over 50 fantasy points in both games. Salary hasn't budged, though. He's still $40. I think that's plenty fair for a player of Beal's caliber.
Yeah, and I'm looking at our ownership projections on Awesemo for both guys, and it's low, super low for Paul. It's lower than I thought it would be for both guys, to be honest with you. Paul George is right at 12.5, 12.4%, and just below him, a couple of slots below him, Bradley Beal at 10.6%. It can't all be the salary, right? That these guys are super low owned.
Yeah, I think it's that next tier down is gonna gobble up some ownership, right? You look at DeMar DeRozan at 33. He's been playing fantastic basketball for the Bulls. Again, another guy with a usage rate who's been up over 30% each of the last 5 games. And in addition to the scoring, he's kind of taken on some additional peripheral stats over the last few years. So he's just been a really nice value here. And since his price hasn't budged, I think people are going to go back to the well there. And then you go down one more spot to OG Anunoby. And Anunoby is like the guy for the Raptors right now.
Right.
So I think both of those players will eat up the majority of the ownership when you consider how much more expensive the top guys are.
All right. So anybody specific that if you were staying away from cost, and that would be the reason at the top, when we start to move to maybe that mid-range, if we're looking at maybe that 18 or really 20, if it's Giddey still in that $20 range or below, we're waiting on Scotty Barnes as well. So that's a big thing. $23 we have. He is doubtful tonight. So yep. Doesn't look like still a game time decision technically, right? But is doubtful coming into that GTD. So I don't know if that changes anything or if you were looking to get to him initially.
Yeah, no, it would help Anunoby, I think, more than anything else. So that would be another reason why his ownership is kind of popping here. I think the guy for me in this price range is Desmond Bane. Whether or not Morant plays, I think $18 is just too cheap considering sort of the value that he's given us. He's emerged as like their legitimate number 2 offensive option, at least for the time being, with Dillon Brooks out. When Brooks comes back, right, things might change in that regard, but Bane's been playing great. We have him projected as sort of the best value in this price range in our projections. And certainly if Marant is out, then he becomes an even stronger play. So he's where I'm going, especially since it doesn't appear like he's going to catch a ton of ownership, right around 10.5%. I think that's very fair for him.
I left the door open for you. Going to go your guy, RJ Barrett. I left the door open for you. No interest.
Yeah, RJ Barrett, great game, right?
Yes.
I don't think we can count on those very often.
Yes.
He's like I consider him a better real life player than a fantasy player, at least at this point in his career. So I will not be playing RJ Barrett tonight at $25. I appreciate you opening the door for me, but I will have to gracefully close it and end it with a bing bong. Bing bong.
There it is. I don't even get it open. It's you just look through the ring. We're not taking that shit today. All right, let's move to the 4, and we'll round out here with the center spot. Sabonis at the top. You also have Jason Tatum here on this slate. Julius Randle. I don't know. Now is another opportunity to go back. Where are you looking at it, again with the stars and scrubs mentality to build this ticket tonight? Where are you looking at the 4?
Yeah, you have to start with Tobias Harris, right? I mean, Tobias is going to be the guy tonight. It's a role that we've seen him in the past, when Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid have been out, and he doesn't disappoint in that role. So his usage rate up with Embiid off the court. Now, granted, he's only played 7 minutes without Embiid this season. He's averaging over 2 fantasy points per minute in that situation. So certainly we're not going to expect that, but he could be a 1.25 fantasy point type player. We're getting him at $31, but he has the upside to be in that like $40 player conversation. So he's going to be the chalk. We've got him at like 50% owned, 55% even. I think at that price, he's very tough to get away from. If you wanted to be a little underweight on him, I wouldn't be opposed to that too, because there are some other options that we can get to, I think, at the position that also warrant some discussion, but Harris at 31, like it's hard to beat that price.
Yeah, I agree. And this is not the first time this year that in his career that Harris has played without Embiid. And we've seen that. And look, there is no Simmons facilitator, not scorer out there. It stands to reason that there may be some clear out and there may just be some take the ball and do something and volume with Harris. Where else, though? You mentioned a couple of other guys, and I don't know if we're going down, the Precious Achiuwa, if we're going down to that $15, $17, $18 range as far as a pivot.
Yeah, I think first off, Nick Batum, $11, excellent value play tonight. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on him because we know what we're getting from Nick Batum. Like it's around 30 minutes and 20, 25 fantasy points, which you'll take at $11. And then for me, John Collins at 26. I think if you wanted to pivot off of Harris, he would be sort of the direction that I would go in.
I like Collins and wasn't looking at him initially. You're definitely not getting much volatility as far as like a standard deviation. So especially I would think compared to other guys that you may be paying up for, like an Evan Mobley or even the higher price guys like Randall.
Yeah, he's been solid. The fact that Clint Capella's minutes have been down a little bit has helped him for sure. Collins' rebound rate goes way up when he's not sharing the court with Capella. So I think that's been very good for him, and I will continue to take advantage of that until Capella's minutes start really trending up. Then we can probably reevaluate it. But at the moment, Collins is standing out as a nice play. He's where I would go if not Tobias. I think that Miles Bridges has become too expensive. Mobley's interesting without Kevin Love, but again, we're paying an extra buck, and I don't feel any better about him than I do Collins. We're
going to wind down with centers real quick. Matt's going to break down some value plays. Lofty and Adam are coming your way next with the deeper dive. Speaking of which, Adam's deeper dive available for you free each and every day. So you should be taking full advantage of what we have available to you on site, like free stuff. And that's Adam's breakdown daily on the deeper dive. All right, my friend, it's all you. If you want to look at, we talked a lot about no Joel Embiid. And now let's look at it from Jokic to the top to other areas of attack.
Yeah, I think center is pretty easy tonight. It's not a spot where you want to mess around.
Yes.
Plug in Andre Drummond first of all, and then plug in Nikola Jokic. If you want to go with two centers, you put Jokic in the utility spot and you do it that way. But Drummond is just a no-brainer, can't fade type play tonight.
Love it, man. The guy might have 30 rebounds. All right.
He's over 1.4 DraftKings points per minute this season. And we have him projected for 30 minutes tonight.
Knicks cover? That's what we all want to know.
I'm the wrong guy to ask about this because the Knicks it's just been ingrained into my brain from an early age that the Knicks are not a good basketball team. So like my initial thought is you look at the Knicks -7 and I'm like, fade. But you know what? The Knicks might be good. I might have to change my tune.
Okay. Yeah. Give it some time though. Right. I don't want to force you into anything.
We'll let it marinate.
Exactly. All right. Thanks to Jordan. Thanks to you, sir. We appreciate it, Matt. Thanks to you all out there. Don't go anywhere. Lofty, Adam, deeper dive, live before lock, all coming your way right now. We appreciate it though. Thanks to Yahoo, and click those links and take advantage of what we have below.
I knew you would. I knew your team was hurt. I just not sure Henry else.
We're still gonna make it though. It's still gonna happen. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo. Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS. On a bit of a heater lately, fella.
Yeah, it's been a nice fun stretch. Hopefully, we can keep it going.
Yeah, but the great thing is you got NBA mixed in, football, hockey. I mean, just running the gauntlet here.
Yeah, need to start playing golf this week, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. What do we got coming up for PGA?
I have no idea.
Me neither. No. Ben tells me some of these tournaments I've never even heard of them before. So, yeah, it's one of those things. But that's why we've got content that you guys can pay attention to. Of course, the PGA shows that we'll have throughout the week and the articles and the tools and all that. But we're here for basketball. So what's going on? Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. If you're just joining, or maybe you're coming in from the pregame show with Matt and Eytan, welcome. Hit it. Let's get it to 200 out of the gate. What do we? Oh, we got over 1,000 people watching right now. So it's really not that difficult a ratio to attain. I'm going to go and hit that right now. A little self-promotion, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Greatly appreciated to all of you who support us and have already done so. But if you haven't, only takes a second. And if you hate us, just unsubscribe. You'll never have to hear from us again. All right, man. So we got 9 games, and we've got some interesting ones, some super low scoring projected games as well, and a number of injuries that are right now pending. We got no Joel Embiid today, which is pretty significant. Waiting on news from guys like John Morant, Malcolm Brogdon. There are a few big pieces that could shift kind of the foundation of this slate if they break in the way that they're actually not playing.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty important pieces. John Morant, Malcolm Brogdon, obviously make a big difference. You already have Scotty Barnes doubtful. You have Embiid ruled out. So this is, it kind of feels like the first slate where it feels like really like truly basketball season, where there's pieces that are huge that we're still waiting on news on.
First question, first things first, because we got to get through 9 games. We're going to do our best at it. We're going to make this work. We're going to get concise, comprehensive information and make sure we don't skimp on any games at the end. That's my commitment today.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm going to try my best. You as well. I mean, you're not exactly the most short-winded person yourself, you know?
Yeah.
But
sure.
First question, out of the gate, always ask this. With 9 games today, just assuming all the big ones that are questionable right now, assuming they play, so we don't get too far into the weeds right away. Is this a balanced slate? Can you go balanced? Should we be looking stars and scrubs for this one? What do you make of all of the top tier players on this slate? Because to be fair, there's no Curry, there's no Giannis, right? There's none of the Lakers players. There's no Joel Embiid. There are a lot, and I'm missing out on a ton that we could get to, but there are a lot, no Harden, Durant. There are a lot of top tier elite level players that aren't on this slate.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because typically when you get a slate like this, it would, I think, lend itself to being a little bit more balanced just because you don't have a lot of true stars at the top. Clearly, Jokic is great, but you know, Towns is really good, but like he's not Giannis level or anything like that. But I still think this actually sets up more stars and scrubby to me because the pricing on DraftKings today in particular, I think on FanDuel you have a little bit more, you can go a little bit more balanced because they have some really, really mispriced players. But the pricing on DraftKings, especially in the mid-range, is just so sharp today. Like everybody that there's going to be so many guys that I quote unquote like, but that also I think are really difficult to roster because they're basically priced to their ceiling or at least to an above average performance. That is going to, I think, push me towards going more stars and scrubs because you do have some good value today, potentially more opening up. And then you do have the guys at the top that it's not like Jokic got drastically more expensive just because, you know, LaMelo Ball did. You have the top tier is still priced about where they normally would be. So I think it's going to be set up more so to get to those top guys.
All right, beautiful. Let's jump into it. Then we got Cleveland and Charlotte, 220 total. Cleveland getting 5 points on the road here. So this actually, we have a relatively significant piece of news, right? Isaac Okoro is still out, but Kevin Love, who had been playing anywhere from 17 to 24 minutes per game, that seems to have been his ceiling so far this season, is in the health and safety protocol for COVID. He's going to be out at least a couple games here. Does that change anything for you today with Cleveland? Is there anyone that can get enough of a minutes boost to put them in viable territory?
I think it makes a lot of guys on Cleveland viable. I wouldn't call any of them, definitely not any outside of Sexton, and probably not really any of them at all a priority. But I do think it's interesting to note Cleveland's been pretty consistently running 8-man rotations this year. Last game, by the end of the game, it was more than an 8-man, but they were getting blown out by Phoenix. So I think it's pretty likely that you get let's say Dean Wade replacing Kevin Love playing backup center minutes, but then that you just see like Cedi Osman pick up a lot of minutes in place of Okoro, but you also see Darius Garland and Colin Sexton and Mobley and these guys play 34 to 36 minutes, somewhere in there, as opposed to them adding, let's say, Windler and Stevens to the rotation and still keeping flat minutes. I think there's a good chance you get a couple of minutes added on to a lot of the starters. The issue is that the pricing is mostly where it should be. I think Colin Sexton at 5,900 on DraftKings is a little bit underpriced. We saw 37.5 minutes from him in the first game that Isaac Okoro missed. Then last game he played 18.5 minutes, but I'm willing to completely throw that game away. They went into the half. Phoenix was on like a 19-2 run. Then Phoenix came out to start the second half on like a 26-7 run. All of Cleveland's starters subbed out. Only 2 of them ever came back. So I think there's a good chance you're getting 34 to 36 minutes at least from Sexton here. I think Garland plays low to mid 30s. Mobley probably plays mid 30s. Even Jared Allen probably picks up a few more minutes. The issue, I would typically like Allen a lot, but he has been losing rebound opportunities to Evan Mobley and Lauri Markkanen. So his rebounding rate's down a bit from previous years, so that makes him a little bit more difficult to get to. And then even like Ricky Rubio off the bench, he's averaging 28 minutes per game. He's playing really, really well so far. Now he's going to be running with that second unit without Kevin Love out there, so potentially even more usage. Already has a 24.5% usage rate this year. I think Cleveland gives you a lot of pieces that can round out a lineup, but not really much that you're starting with.
The one thing I'll say about Rubio, not to spend too long on this, and appreciate you, Hugo. He says, Laffy, don't neglect random diatribes for the sake of efficiency. Best part of the show. I know, man, but sometimes we just get a little out of control here. The thing about Rubio that's crazy is if you look at his potential assists per game this season, he's at 14.7. I mean, that is top 10 in the league.
Yeah, in 28 minutes per game.
Right, exactly. So just from an overall volume standpoint as a playmaker, those are big numbers for a guy that's playing sub 30 minutes. It's pretty impressive. Would you say he is somebody that you're willing to get a little bit of today at his price point?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had a lot of him in previous games, and then now there's the potential for more minutes depending how the rotation goes. Yeah. But yeah, it's 9-game slate, not prioritizing Rubio, but I do think that he's got a pretty nice ceiling at 5,500 if he's going to play around 28 minutes.
And to be fair, he has played a couple games of 30 plus, so it's not out of the question that he could get there. What about Charlotte on the opposite side of this game? Of course, you and I over the past week or so have talked a lot about Bridges and just his excellent play. LaMelo Ball's price point has come up considerably. He got to 33 minutes last game. Is LaMelo priced out of play for you right now, or do you think this is fair?
I mean, he's still got a really high ceiling, but I think the price tag is pretty difficult to get to because his average production just leaves you pretty far short of wanting to pay $8,500 for him. You still have playing time concerns. Yes, he's dealt with foul trouble in some of these games, but you've also seen him just not play as many minutes as a lot of guys in that price range are going to play. Last night played about 33 minutes. That was really good to see. But again, like if you take a step back and think about options in the $8,500 to $9K range, you're typically not excited they played 33 minutes. You're kind of disappointed. So the playing time gap at that price tag is a little bit of an issue there. The point per minute production is obviously great. And if you do happen to get a game where he plays 36 or 37 minutes, he can win you a tournament. But there's a lot of really good plays on this slate, I think. So it's hard to get there. I think in general, Charlotte's pricing is pretty prohibitive. Miles Bridges is up to 7,900. Yeah, he's played great. It is also worth noting he's only played about 43 minutes alongside Terry Rozier this year, but he has a 21.5% usage rate compared to about 25.5% overall. That makes a ton of sense. You've seen, last year Bridges was an 18 to 19% usage rate guy. Even if that goes up some this year, it's unlikely he jumps all the way up to 25% and maintains it. I do think, maybe he takes a little bit of usage from Rozier, a little bit from Hayward compared to where they were at last year, but I'm not buying into quite the level of production that we've gotten from Miles Bridges so far.
Are we assuming on the second of a back-to-back, since Rozier played 33 minutes yesterday, that he's fine with no limitations?
That's my assumption. I'm definitely not assuming he's limited. I wouldn't be shocked if we get news that he's not going to play. But if assuming he suits up, I'm treating it like he's full go.
Anybody else you like for Charlotte?
No, there's not really anything here given their pricing.
All right. What about with San Antonio and Indiana? Next one up, San Antonio getting 3 points, 216.5 total here. I guess you have to start at least from a conversational standpoint with DeJounte Murray, whose price point to start the season, Adam, this is like 12 days ago on DraftKings, at least, was 6,800. He's 9,200 now. I mean, that's a huge spike in price over the course of less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. And it's a lot. It's a hell of a price tag to pay for DeJounte Murray, but it's also hard to argue that he hasn't deserved it so far. He's averaging almost 36 minutes per game. He's averaging 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Usage rate is at 24%. Assist percentage is at 34%. And that 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, it's not even like it's on the back of great shooting. He has a 47.8% true shooting percentage this year. So, it's not that. He rebounds well, and he always has. He gets steals. So I think that he's at a price point where he's risky because he's 9,200. You don't really have much of a margin for error there. But Indiana's been a really bad team defensively, and Murray, not only has he played great, he is someone that, at least I believe, is a very, very good player. He's still only 25 years old. So, I buy into this because, unlike, for example, Miles Bridges, where you're looking at all of his usage and all of his production, and you're saying, is he really going to just take all of this from Gordon Hayward and Rozier and to some extent LaMelo, or is he going to, drop back towards his previous numbers? With DeJounte Murray, he's the clear number one guy on this offense. It's going to run through him. And so it makes all the sense in the world that he's this involved. So it's an expensive price tag. I don't think it's, a cash play. I don't think it's a core play or anything, but I do still think that there's a ceiling for Murray at 9,200.
What about the rest of San Antonio?
There's not a ton that stands out there. It's more so kind of like Cleveland type guys where I think they're reasonable. They're not priorities for me, but Derek White at 6,400, he's averaging about 33 minutes per game, not producing anywhere near DeJounte Murray's level, but he's still averaging 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. You have Pirtle, who's playing really, really well. He's gotten more expensive, but if you're going to get 32 minutes from him, he's a decent option. Kelden Johnson is shooting a lot, leads the team in usage percentage at 24.1%. So like those guys are fine. And I feel the same way about Murray too. I just think they're priced where they should be. I don't necessarily think they're overpriced, but they're not standing out. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, where it just seems like more of a stars and scrubs slate for me, because I don't think a lot of the guys in this price range are underpriced. Whereas I think, for example, there's guys at the bottom of the pricing tier that are underpriced, and I think the guys at the top are underpriced. These the mid-range pricing today on DraftKings is really sharp, though.
Yeah, it really is, and that I think probably also leads to where you're going to when you said earlier at the beginning of the show that maybe this is a better stars and scrubs spot, at least on a site like DraftKings. Yeah,
exactly. I think on FanDuel it's a lot. There's a lot more ways to go on FanDuel because, like, for example, we haven't gotten to them yet, but you have Tobias Harris at 7,400. You have Damian Lillard, and I think it's 8,300. They're 9,600, 9,100, and 9,600 on DraftKings. For comparison, you kind of just see a lot of that across the board today, where FanDuel has a lot more forgiving pricing. So there's more paths you can take.
Sure, yeah, and over on Yahoo, you've got someone like DeJounte Murray that's $35 too. So I mean, he's not cheap there, but it's definitely a little bit less than comparison to a $9,200 salary. With the Pacers, this is just, and we're learning, even with, a healthy Malcolm Brogdon, whether he's in or out, that this is just not a very good team, Adam. I think they've won one game on the season thus far. Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yeah, they've dropped 4 straight. They lost in overtime to Washington. They fell to Charlotte. The only game they won was Miami in overtime. But they do have quality fantasy producers. I am curious, though, if Karis LeVert plays and gets, 22 minutes, what type of an impact? Because I know he only played 16 minutes last game. I assume maybe, let's say 20 minutes, probably gets ramped up coming off a broken back. But he had like a 38% usage rate in those 16 minutes. And obviously, as he gets more run, he's not going to sustain that, especially playing alongside the likes of Sabonis and Brogdon. But the more minutes he gets, how much does that muddy the waters for this Pacers squad?
I think it makes the peripheral plays not look quite as good. Like Chris Duarte is going to lose usage and probably playmaking opportunities the more minutes he plays along plays alongside LeVert. TJ McConnell, if he's starting in place of Brogdon, not that he's a high usage guy anyway, but he's going to cede some of that to LeVert when LeVert's on the floor. If Brogdon's out there, he probably loses a little bit of usage. You had seen him get off to a really, really good start this year in terms of fantasy production. He probably loses some of that to LeVert. Sabonis, I think, is probably going to be pretty steady. He's like a mid-20s usage rate guy, no matter who is on the floor, it seems like. But I just think that, it's more so LeVert will impact the minutes of guys like Holiday. He's probably going to affect the usage of guys like Chris Duarte that we've been playing a lot so far this year.
So where else are we going with Indy?
So Brogdon obviously matters a lot. If he's out, TJ McConnell has really struggled in his couple of starts. At 4,800, he'd still be viable, but I think there's going to be enough value on this slate that I wouldn't say he's like a core player or anything. Sabonis is okay, but again, he's priced up to 10,100 on DraftKings. Even in the games since Brogdon's injury, he's getting more potential assists. He's gone from like 6 potential assists per game to about 9.5, but that's still a lot less than he was getting on average last year. So I think it's just, a schematics change with the new coaching in Indiana that you're not going to see, at least to this point, you're not going to see the same sort of assist numbers and assist upside from Sabonis. He's still a good scorer. He's still playing huge minutes. He's still a good rebounder. So there's still a path to success, but I just don't think he's quite the same fantasy option that he has been in the past. Miles Turner, reasonably priced at 5,900. I think he was a lot better play this morning when I did the show with Josh than he is now, because this morning it was like, there's a lot of good center options, but Turner's one of them. Now it's kind of like if you're on FanDuel, you're just losing your center spot basically. And if you're on DraftKings, you're losing one of your center spots because of Drummond. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to get to Turner than it was this morning.
So the only thing, just quickly, and then we can keep going on this. The only thing with McConnell is, like, let's just assume that he gets another start. He's averaging 34 minutes in those 2 starts, 15 potential assists, which is pretty solid over that span. He's, shot terribly in the one game, and he just hasn't produced, but like 80 touches per game, 15 potential assists. The volume has been there and the minutes have been there for him. He's just not done a lot with it.
Yeah. And it's like 14.5 potential assists per game in those 2 games as well. So
yeah, I rounded up to 15.
Oh, I didn't. I was half listening. I was
Shocker.
I was trying to pull stuff up. At least I wasn't working on Hockey Line. That's what you thought. But yeah, so it's kind of, you've seen the floor. And when you're talking about him playing with LeVert and playing with Sabonis and playing with Duarte, there's certainly times he's going to just not produce. He's not going to produce to where you want. But at 4,800, it's also not like it would be surprising to finally see that TJ McConnell game that we've been waiting for. So I think he would still be a good option in tournaments. I think on a lot of slates, he's someone I'd go back to in cash. But today you just already have really, really good value. Like, you have Drummond, you have some other pieces from Toronto we'll talk about. So I don't think he would end up getting into cash.
Want to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Portland and Philly. Everyone says you're talking. You're a fast talker.
I'm an extremely fast talker.
Well, you shouldn't have hung out with Jordan.
What?
Jordan knows where I'm going with this. There's $2 bags of crack.
Oh.
No, put it on 3/4 speed. Maybe that'll be better. We're trying to get through all of this. If honestly, not even kidding. If you miss anything and you want to play back, that's why we have the game list on the sidebar, to make it easier for you guys. Maybe you're jumping in late and maybe you have a good feel for the slate, but there's just something you want to hear that was broken down. You can always check it out on the sidebar. And find those games right there. I think that's helpful to a lot of people if you're coming in and looking for something specific. Portland and Philadelphia. This game had a 6-point spread. What's that?
Brogdon out, LeVert in, Lamb out.
Okay. All right, that's significant. So, I think we covered all of that, though, yeah. Right? Like TJ McConnell, the big game could come. You think he's more viable in cash, but at his price, he's kind of fine anywhere.
Yeah, I think he's more valuable in tournaments just because I don't really know that I need him in cash.
Oh, in tournaments. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. I think he's fine. Like, if he ends up in cash, that would be fine. But I think, like, I'm probably going to end up paying up at a couple of the guard spots. So I think he's okay. I'm not really confident in him based on what we've seen. But like you were saying, the opportunities have still been there.
Portland and Philly. The Sixers were 6-point favorites before the Joel Embiid news. That moved the line 4 points. Now they're 2-point favorites at home. But let's start with Portland. This is another team that just really has not played particularly well. Of course, it's early in the season, but ultimately, man, when it comes to Damian Lillard here, and you've got a slate, again, that doesn't have a ton of those elite players, but there are still some good ones like Jokic, of course, and Towns against Orlando, and we'll get to a few others. How does how does Damian Lillard fit in for you amongst all of these top tier options? He has not been great to start the year from a DFS standpoint.
I think on FanDuel, he's still a priority at 8,400 or 8,300, whatever it is. On DraftKings at 9,600, I like him in tournaments. Right now, we have him projected for 9.5% ownership. The thing with Lillard is there's been a couple of things this year that have hurt him. For one, Portland's been in several blowouts already. In the competitive games, you've still seen him playing 38 to 40 minutes. So it's not like he's losing minutes in competitive games. They've just been involved in several blowouts. So that has it's hurt his average playing time. And it's been one reason why he hasn't been great from a DFS standpoint. He also is shooting really, really poorly from the field. He is shooting 23% from three so far this season. Last year, he shot 39.1%. He's still averaging about 1.1 fantasy points per minute, but that's well below what you're typically expecting from Lillard. But the usage is there. The assist opportunities are there. The minutes are there in competitive games. All that's really missing is his shots not falling. He's shooting 2 for 14 from three, and then 0 for 8, and then 0 for 9. It's going to turn around sooner than later. You have a very long track record of who Damian Lillard is. And I think that on DraftKings, it's going to be hard for people to click that price tag when he's playing so poorly and you have plenty of other options. On FanDuel, I expect him to be popular, but he's really underpriced. Like, he's basically, if he plays 38 minutes at his current production, you're talking about, 40 or so FanDuel points for 83 or 8,400. It's not great, but it's fine. But that's talking about Damian Lillard shooting 23% from three. If he gets back to what he normally does, he's just going to completely blow that salary away. So I like Lillard in different ways, depending on the site. I think I wouldn't get to him in cash on DraftKings. There's other guards in that range that I would rather get to. On FanDuel, I think he's a good cash play. I think he's a good tournament play on either site. Okay.
Where else do you go here?
I don't see a whole lot of anything else. Nurkic has produced at a high rate this year, but the minutes haven't been there. Cody Zeller, a solid backup, is taking some minutes from him. You also have had games where either there's been blowouts, but then there's also been games where Portland's playing against a smaller team. For example, yesterday, PJ Washington closed at the 5 for Charlotte. Portland closed without either one of Nurkic or Zeller on the floor. Here, assuming Drummond is closing for Philly and the game's competitive, I'm assuming one of Nurkic or Zeller is closing this game. So I do think that there's a path to 29 minutes or so for Nurkic, but it's just really hard to think he's getting anything above that based on what we've seen rotation-wise. Robert Covington's cheap, but he has been completely non-existent this year. 8% usage rate so far, about a 1% assist percentage. He's just been absolutely terrible from a fantasy standpoint. Norman Powell came back and played 33 minutes yesterday. He's another one where assuming he plays, I don't think he's going to be limited. He's 4,800. He's not a high usage guy or a great fantasy option, but he's around the 0.8 fantasy point per minute player at 4,800. So he's someone where I don't think it's a priority because there is just really good value at some spots on this slate. But I do think he's a little bit underpriced, assuming he's good to go.
Yeah, look, he's never going to be the highest usage guy or even the top two. I mean, really, I don't know what Nurkic's usage is. I know Powell's at 19%, but really he's like the borderline fourth highest usage guy on the team that doesn't get a ton of peripherals. You just need him to have a big game shooting.
Yeah, Nurkic is at 23.6 usage percentage.
So he's he's your fourth option, really.
Right.
With Philadelphia, no Joel Embiid rocks everything here, changes everything when you take a guy like Embiid, and you can see that the line moved 4 points. There aren't many players in this league that can move a line with their absence as much as that. But looking just at our ownership, obviously, Andre Drummond is going to be getting a lot of ownership. The big thing here, though, is even though there was no time to preemptively price these players up, Tobias Harris on DraftKings at least was already $9,100. Adam on Yahoo, he's $31. So not as crazy, but 91 for Tobias Harris. We may have differing opinions here, but that is a horrifying price point for someone that has watched a lot of Tobias Harris, played enough DFS and rostered enough Tobias Harris to know that could go wrong quickly, whether he's in or out. But the big thing here is, and then I'll turn this over to you. It's not just Embiid out. It's Embiid and Ben Simmons out. And we can't forget about that.
Yeah, for sure. So starting with Harris, he's like Lillard, where on FanDuel, he's 7,400. I think he's clearly one of the best options. And I thought that before Embiid was ruled out. Now it's only more drastic. On DraftKings, he went from, I think, being overpriced, or at least a very, very risky option, to viable. Still not a cash play for me. But going back to last season, he's played 450 minutes without Embiid or Simmons on the floor. He has a 31% usage rate. He's averaged 1.26 DraftKings points per minute, 25% assist percentage, 12% rebounding percentage. One thing to point out there is that last year's backup center was Dwight Howard, who is a little bit lower usage guy than Andre Drummond. So I don't think that you necessarily see quite as big a usage bump for Harris. But even this year, including the minutes with Embiid, he has a 24.5% usage rate. So I think that he's still a very high upside play here. His production should increase with Embiid out, but still much, much easier to get to on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. Drummond, I don't really care what his ownership is, just I'm playing him. Like, outside of massive, massive foul trouble or injury or ejection, I really don't know how Drummond hurts you at this price tag. He can have a pretty bad game by his standards, and he's still going to get you like 28, 30 DraftKings points. If he has any semblance of a normal game, he's going to be somebody that you can't win without. He's averaged 1.41 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's averaged 1.41 DraftKings points per minute over the last 3 seasons. I'm assuming he's playing at least around like 30 minutes here. It's just really, really hard to get away from him. And
if you actually take his real DraftKings points in terms of per minute, it's been 1.45. Just given the fact that, you get bonus, although I don't think he hasn't had any bonuses yet this year, but on DraftKings with that double bonus, you got a little bit of extra juice there. You'd have to think if he gets the minutes, he's getting there. I mean, he looks healthy, and he didn't look healthy last year dealing with that toe or foot or whatever it was. And if you even gave me 24 minutes from Andre Drummond at this price, and you said, hey, I'm playing this guy in every lineup, I don't think I would say anything against it.
Yeah, it's just I assume I'll have 100% Drummond tonight.
Okay, and you're going to play 150 lineups. That's what I'm saying. Like that's a commitment, but you very, very seldom do you get a guy at this price with this per minute production, with this upside at the center position, and he's not priced to where he should. He should be in a starting spot if Embiid was out and they had time to move his price point. 6,500 they probably put him at, or something way higher than where he's at now, at least.
I mean, on Cleveland and Detroit, he was 9K. And
my only thing is I don't know how many minutes he's going to get because backup. Right. But yeah, you're exactly. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, as a starter, he's a 9K starter.
Right, exactly. Like, whatever issues people have with Andre Drummond as a basketball player, it has to do with real life basketball. It doesn't have to do with fantasy, because from a fantasy standpoint, he's always, or at least for as long as I can remember, been an excellent fantasy point per minute guy. He gets defensive stats. He gets some assists. He rebounds at a really high rate. He's a mid-20s usage guy. It's just, he would, if Embiid were in, $4,400 Drummond would have at least been viable in terms of. And so now you take Embiid out. It's just, this is where NBA DFS is different than other sports. There's no other sport, I don't think, where someone can be projected for like 80% ownership in tournaments, and it would still just be like, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm going there.
Exactly. Because for Drummond to fail, he's in massive foul trouble or he's hurt at this price, honestly.
Right. Like, is he going to necessarily be the highest scoring center? Probably not, but he could be. Which is another reason why it's just such a good play. But even if you play, like, barring massive foul trouble or injury, which I understand there's variance, but I just don't think I don't think I am. If you consider yourself like a really, really bad NBA DFS player, then like, it would make sense for you to not play Drummond and hope that you get like insanely lucky on like fouls or injury. But if you're a competent player, you're probably going to be able to find other spots on this slate that offer more profit potential to get away from. So
no question.
For me, it's just plugging Drummond in. Anybody
else here, since I want to speed this up a little bit, that you like for Philly?
There's still upside with these other guys. We talked about Harris, but Tyrese Maxey, $5,600. He has a 25.5% usage rate. in 754 minutes without Embiid or Simmons since last year. That doesn't account for Harris, but I expect him to get some more shots up. He is competing with Shake Milton for minutes now, at least to some extent. So, not quite the same expected minutes role that you had before. Milton at 3,600 is viable as well. But I think the priorities are very clearly Drummond on both sites and then Harris on FanDuel.
All right, let's keep it going. By the way, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, you've heard us talk about them all the time. They got a 100K contest tonight too for Monday Night Football, which I would highly advise you take a look at. Also 50K baller, 10K up top for NBA. But hold on, if you haven't signed up yet, if you haven't played at Yahoo Daily Fantasy, you got to use the link in the description and the one our producer Jordan Klein is about to throw into the chat right now, because you will get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That's everything on the site: ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom bust tool, lineup builder, everything. All these tools built by Awesemo himself. Number 1 ranked player for a reason. He's won a lot of money using these tools. Adam's won a lot of money recently using these tools over the last week as well. So is our buddy Jordan, who seemingly, not this Jordan, the one that tweets us every day with another 7 or 6 figure win. But in all seriousness, it's free. All you have to do, and this is why I mean it's free, all you have to do is use that link, sign up, deposit $10 or more. If you just deposit $10, you will get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, $90 value. Yahoo will send your information to us. We'll email you. We'll help you set it up. That's simple. If you haven't signed up yet, this is how you got to do it. And they'll also give you $10 in credit onto the site. So that's a wash. All you're left with now is $20 over at Yahoo and a $90 value Awesemo Plus Platinum subscription for all sports, not just basketball. Everything on the site and all of our tools incorporate Yahoo as well, so you can use them for that. Use the link in the description. Don't miss out on this. You'd be crazy to if you haven't signed up on Yahoo. It's legitimately free. Actually, no, you're getting money for it if you think about it. So use that link, check it out, and use the tools. I think you'll love them. All right, Adam, let's move on to the next one. We've got Chicago and Boston. How much of an impact do you think we're going to see with Patrick Williams out? I know he was out last game, and the minutes redistribution didn't really seem all that crazy at all when you think about it, right? Like you had, what was it? Ayu Dosunmu, right? You had him get some additional minutes and a couple of others, but nobody really benefited in a huge way. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, you got Javonte Green starting and playing 22 minutes.
That's what I mean. He only played 22 as a starter.
Right. That's not super useful for fantasy. The biggest impact to me is I think it solidifies Alex Caruso as a starter or as a closer most nights. We had seen that happening a lot anyway. He's having a quietly good fantasy season, 0.78 DraftKings points per minute, but also averaging 28 minutes per game. Williams not being healthy, I think, just makes it even more likely that you get Caruso in most closing lineups alongside Lonzo, Levine, Vooch, and DeRozan. So as weird as it is to say, particularly with the DraftKings pricing, but Caruso is actually my favorite guy from the Bulls on DraftKings as far as players that I expect to get to, like frequency wise. 4,100 for 28 minutes or so of around 0.8 fantasy point per minute production, I think looks pretty good from Caruso. You can obviously target Vooch, Levine, Lonzo, DeRozan in tournaments just because they offer so much upside from night to night. But I think they're a little more expensive than I would like them to be considering them as a priority.
Anybody a priority on this team?
No.
Okay. What about on the opposite side of it from Boston?
Still wouldn't say priorities. I do think the front court is pretty interesting. Al Horford in particular at 6,500. I think he's one of these guys where like the real life narrative and the fact that he, basically was on, like he was on Oklahoma City last year and then got shut down because they just wanted to play their young guys. He had his issues with Philadelphia. But even last year with Oklahoma City, he averaged 1.13 DraftKings points per minute. So far this year with Boston, he's averaging 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. I don't know if he keeps that up, but he is leading this team in rebound chances per game, even though he's averaging like 3 less minutes than Robert Williams. He's averaging a lot less minutes than Tatum. He's producing at a really, really high rate. So I think at 6,500 for him, there is still some upside there. Robert Williams, I think, is being hurt a bit by Horford, but at 6,100, he still has a nice ceiling because of the block upside that he offers. The issue is just, kind of the same thing I'd said with Miles Turner. On FanDuel, it would mean not rostering Andre Drummond, assuming he's a center on FanDuel. I'm not actually positive, but you only have the one center spot. You have Jokic, you have Drummond. On DraftKings, you have Drummond and obviously Jokic and a bunch of other good centers. So it'll be kind of tough to get there. Schroeder at 5,600, I think is a reasonable option as well. Not super confident in his minutes since most games this year, Boston's been missing at least one of their key guys, and that's not the case tonight. But I still think there's a good chance you get around 28 to 30 minutes from Schroeder.
Okay. Anything else you want to hit on with Chicago, Boston? We good?
No, not unless people need to be told that Tatum and Brown are really good and can have good games from time to time, but I don't really like their pricing.
All right, cool. And look, we got 9 games in this slate. We don't need to focus on one of them just because it's there. Washington and Atlanta, however, 223 total. Believe it or not, man, that's the highest total on the slate. So right now, between these two teams, you don't really have any significant injury news. Wizards are 5.5-point road dogs. But essentially everybody here that we expected to play is in line to play. And you're seeing some of these price points start to creep up a little bit. Is the Washington Wizards a team you're looking to target heavily tonight or no?
No, the Wizards I think are pretty tough to get to. Their pricing is just expensive. You have Daniel Gafford back, so I'm not paying $6,700 for Harrell. I doubt Gafford's playing enough minutes in his first game back to be a really good play at 4,800. Plus he's a center. Beal is priced up to 10K. So that's a really tough sell. Dinwiddie's priced up. This is a really, really difficult team to get to, I think.
It really is. Once you get to those salaries, it becomes tough as hell. Atlanta on the other end, I think you have a couple spots and our ownership bears this out. Like on FanDuel, Trae Young and John Collins are both getting, slightly north of 20% ownership. Collins up around 15% on DraftKings. So all of those guys are at least looking to be are going to get some ownership today. 21% Collins on Yahoo at $26. Let's start with Tim. What are your thoughts on Collins against Washington?
I like him here. There are some good power forward options, but he's averaging about 29 minutes per game this year. He's had some issues with foul trouble that have pulled that down. I think that barring foul trouble and in a competitive game, you're getting at least 30 minutes, if not more, from Collins, most likely more. And he has produced at a really high rate this year. 1.21 DraftKings points per minute is just behind Trae Young for the best fantasy production on the team. He's rebounding. He's getting some assists. He's got a 21.3% usage rate. So I think he looks pretty good here. It's a front court that I think he should be able to have success with.
All right. Trae Young or anybody else for Atlanta? I only asked this because it is the highest total game. That doesn't always mean it's going to be great, especially if teams spread the ball out enough. But Trae Young obviously comes to mind as the first guy that always has that potential to pop off.
Yeah, I think there's a few pieces you can get to here. Young, definitely one of them. He's kind of weird because it's not that he's cheap at 9,300, but he didn't get the same sort of price bump that a lot of other players did. So he's kind of just at his normal price tag. He's averaging 1.26 DraftKings points per minute this year, 44% assist percentage, 31% usage rate, playing 35, 36 minutes in competitive games. So I think he looks good. And then you have some value guys that I think you can take shots at in tournaments as well. Bogdan Bogdanovic at 5,200, only producing 0.74 DraftKings points per minute this year. None of his rates look particularly good, but he's still a talented player that I think in any given game can either, get hot from three or take on a bigger role as a playmaker potentially. So 5,200 for him seems reasonable. And then DeAndre Hunter at 4,200, not the most high upside offensive piece, but if the Hawks are winning down the stretch, I expect that you get Hunter in the closing lineup. If they're losing, I think it's likely you get Reddish or Gallinari. But I think at 4,200, there's some upside for Hunter. Also some upside for Reddish at 4,500. He's got a 27% usage rate this year. Like I was saying, I think that, there's going to be some games where Reddish closes. I think there's going to be some where Hunter closes. It'll depend on, what the score is and how these guys are playing. But I just think that it wouldn't be surprising at all when you have $4,500 Reddish, $4,200 Hunter, $3,700 Gallo. It's not surprising at all if one of them really outperforms that salary against Washington.
Is it fair to say though that there aren't priorities from either side of this one?
I think Collins and Young would be up
as
there.
Close as it gets.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about Toronto and the New York Knicks. Kind of an interesting spot here because on one hand, you've got a wildly low total, 208.5. Toronto touchdown dogs on the road. They're getting 7 points. And then you've got Scotty Barnes in this one who, I'm sorry. So where was he? I was looking at OG Anunoby And he has the highest usage rate on the team this year, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, that's Fred VanVleet sitting at 21.9% usage, which is fine, but it's not like he has an electric assist rate either. It's sub 30%, rebound rates around 6%. And you're still going to get him at a price point that, I mean, I guess some nights is going to be fine, but that is an expensive price point for a guy that hasn't been producing monster numbers in any specific category. And then, like I said, Scotty Barnes is downgraded to doubtful for this one. He's been playing fantastic basketball out of the gate, has really been one of the lone bright spots on this team this year. But ultimately, it's the Toronto Raptors as big dogs in a low-scoring game against a good Knicks defense. So what does Barnes' absence do for them? Does that open things up, whereas otherwise we would not really be on Toronto at all?
I think at the very least, it opens up some cheap value options. You could make the case that it's a benefit for VanVleet and to some extent Anunoby as well, because Barnes has a 23% usage rate this year, but he also has a 13.4% rebounding percentage. He has a 9.3% assist percentage. So all those stats need to be replaced. I think that there's a pretty good chance that you see Anunoby get more rebounding opportunities. I think maybe you see more assist opportunities for VanVleet, probably some more usage for VanVleet as well. But the pricing on these guys is still where it should be. Whereas I think there are value pieces that you can look to. I'm not super confident in how this rotation goes. I think once we get a starting lineup, we'll have a better idea. But there's a lot of ways this can go because Toronto has so many guys that can play different positions. But you've been getting Delano Banton playing pretty healthy minutes as a backup, but he's also getting some minutes alongside VanVleet. So you can get some lineups where it's, Banton, VanVleet, Trent, Anunoby, Achua. So 3K Banton, I think, is a good value option. I would expect him to see increased minutes here. Chris Boucher has been taking on a few more minutes, getting 17, 18 minutes a little bit more often. Early in the day, a lot of sites had him projected to play like 26, 27 minutes. I wrote in the deep dive that I didn't buy into that unless he ends up starting. Now it seems like across the board, he's kind of coming back down. But Alex has had him around 23 minutes, I think, all day. And I agree with that if he comes off the bench, I expect you're getting like 22, 23 minutes from him. I think that Barnes being out at least opens up a few more minutes, and he's only 4K on DraftKings. He's a productive enough player that he's going to look pretty good. And then the third guy that I could see taking a bigger role here is Svi Mikhailuk, who I wouldn't be surprised if you see him start. If they go with VanVleet, Trent, Mikhailuk, Anunoby, and Achua, and maybe Mikhailuk runs into 28, 30 minutes. He's not as good a fantasy producer as Boucher. He's not as good a fantasy producer as Banton. So he's still the one that I would be least interested in going to, but I think he could end up playing quite a few more minutes here than normal as well.
How many minutes are you giving the Boucher tonight?
I think 22 or 23 if he comes off the bench. If he starts, I think you can bump that pretty aggressively because that would signal that Nick Nurse wants him out there against the Knicks' big front court, that he wants to play Boucher alongside Achua. As is, like if he comes off the bench, that's signaling that Nick Nurse is willing to go small against the Knicks starting lineup and closing lineup. So it would make it less likely that Boucher gets a ton more minutes. Okay.
Do you agree with the projected 36% ownership on DraftKings at 4K right now?
Seems a little high to me. It's not, if you don't have him, it's not going to feel good. It's going to be really scary, but I kind of just think that you see this a lot with Boucher. Like you've seen it in previous years too. Like anytime people get any sort of a chance to roster Chris Boucher, they just jump on it because he's a very good. Yeah. He's a very good per minute producer, but there's a lot of times that Nick Nurse is just like, I'm not doing that. And I think it's just important to keep in mind that there's a lot of different ways that this can go. Like just thinking about Toronto's closing lineup, they can play Khem Birch over Boucher alongside Achua as well. I don't necessarily think that's the most likely, but it's doable. You could get Bonga joining the rotation. You can get Mikhailuk in the closing lineup. You can get Banton in the closing lineup. There's a lot of different ways Nurse can do this. And if he doesn't start Boucher, it's at least telling me that Boucher being out there at the same time as Randall and Robinson isn't a priority.
A lot of times things go incredibly well when you roster Boucher, and oftentimes they go extremely wrong. And Nick Nurse is fickle when it comes to matchups and all of that stuff. So
Boucher sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I think everything you're saying is reasonable. People, I think the market, generally speaking, heavily overreacts to Boucher anytime a member of the front court is out.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where I like typically doing what the field's not doing, because I think there's just been a tendency to like for people to be too confident in being able to predict what Nick Nurse is going to do. Can Boucher, even if he comes off the bench, could Boucher end up just being a must-have at 4K? Absolutely. But if 36% of the field's going to be there, I kind of just like my chances going elsewhere and hoping that you get any of the other combinations of lineups that Nick Nurse can use for the bulk of the minutes.
Anybody at all other than maybe some exposure to Julius Randle that you want for the Knicks tonight?
I don't really see much of anything there. Barrett's price tag has jumped up to 7K after his massive game the other day. Robinson is going to be really tough to get to because of Drummond's presence. Kemba Walker at 5,800, I guess, deserves a mention just because it seems like he's trending towards getting starter minutes. He's been playing a lot better over his last couple of games. You saw 32 minutes last time out. So 5,800 for him, still not a priority, but I do think maybe a little bit underpriced.
Quick response to this one, Adam. Nick asks with a super chat. Thanks, Nick. Is playing 3 Sixers, Drummond, Tobias, and Maxey too many in one lineup build on FanDuel?
Should be fine.
Okay. And hey, thank you, Thomas, for the super chat. A big super chat there says Lockhart money tonight. Yeah, Jordan's been killing. Best show in the business. Good luck to all DFS players. Big up. Laffy, happy birthday. Thanks, bud. Not my birthday, not for many months, but thanks anyway. Appreciate the super chat. Speaking of Jordan Lockhart, that brings us to Hall of Fame. Then we got 3 games to go. We're going to make it. We're going to make this work for sure. But anyway, we do Hall of Fame for 2 reasons. One, because it's fun to brag for you guys and show off the big wins at Awesemo. Obviously, it's not bad for us either when you see all of those Awesemo avatars at the top winning 6 figures. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's also fun to see you guys hit these big scores and win your free month of Awesemo Plus. How do you do it? Simple. Go to awesemo.com/avatar. Download the avatar, whether it's Yahoo, FanDuel, DraftKings. You finish first through third in a field of 5,000 or more. Boom. Tweet us at Awesemo HOF. That's all you got to do with the screenshot, okay? Showing us that you won, and you'll get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and you'll get on our Hall of Fame right here, and we'll shout you out on these shows, just like we're shouting out Nick right here. This was amazing. Said, wow, I'm speechless. Huge thanks and shout out to Awesemo team for great content and analysis from Laffy and Greg. He turned $152 into $100,000 yesterday, Adam, on the main slate.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
That's really good.
It's really awesome. Congrats, man. That's life-changing right there. And of course, it just makes it better when you're rocking that Awesemo avatar. Next up, you got Michael. I can't stop winning since I started listening to Neil and Greg. Shout out to the boys. $50,000, second K. Good job, the Hammer. Big thanks to Awesemo, Laffy, Jazzraz, Eric, $102. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're in the nickel, the quarter, whatever. As long as you finish up there, we got you covered. It doesn't have to be a huge score. But that was $1 in play into $102. Amazing ROI. And then our boy Ship My Money with another $20,000 win. Good stuff, fella. You get a free month. All right. And then Gray Kid, your tools continue to help me get better. First ever win that's not split. Thanks to your site. $100 up top. Number 1 on 3 entries in the quarter jukebox. Beautiful stuff. And to close it out, Christopher, thanks to Matt, Jordan, and Awesemo. Bad break with Rocco not playing, but it's hard to complain about 5X my money over there on Prize Picks. Congrats to all of you guys. Download that avatar, tweet us your wins at Awesemo HOF, and include Adam and myself in it because, well, it's fun to see you guys taking home big money. All right, let's go, man. 3 to go. We're good here. Definitely good. And then we'll turn it over to the live before lock. Boys, don't go anywhere. They're taking you up till 7 right after this. Denver, Memphis. Denver Nuggets coming into this one on the road, Adam, 1-point favorites against the Grizzlies. Simple question. What do we do with Nikola Jokic?
Put him in your lineups. He should
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he should be really popular tonight, but he just ends up being such a good play here because there's not a lot of there are other guys to pay up for around him in terms of salary, but there's not really anyone that offers the same level of production. 1.81 DraftKings points per minute for Jokic so far this year. Once again, leads Denver in usage rate, assist percentage, and rebounding percentage. Assist percentage is at 30%, usage rates over 30%, rebounding percentage at 25%, which is massive. And even going back to last year, he's been around 1.7 DraftKings points per minute without Jamal Murray on the floor. So it's really tough to get guys that compare to that. And if you're going to price, this isn't taking anything away from Karl-Anthony Towns, Paul George, these other guys that are up at the top, Sabonis at 10-1. If you're going to price those guys there, you need to make Jokic 11.5 or 12K or something like that. Or he's going to be relatively underpriced, which is the case tonight. So there's a lot of cheap guys you can use. There's not a whole lot of mid-range guys that I like. And then you can pay up for Jokic. On FanDuel, it's different because it means you have to give up Drummond. That's a completely different
Great
animal.
point.
So like a lot there. Just it comes down to ownership there. Right now we have Drummond at 46%. We have Jokic at 8%. That's interesting. If you're going to get away from Drummond on FanDuel, I think you go Jokic because you want there's nothing in Drummond's price range that you're looking at and saying, I think they can beat Drummond any decent percentage of the time. So I think it's more so you're just going to build a completely different lineup. You hope that Jokic scores 30 fantasy points more than Drummond. So, Drummond can get 40, but let's say Jokic goes for 70, you gain 30 points there. And then you're just, getting some value at other positions. So if you are getting away from Drummond, I think Jokic is where you go.
I guess the only question is it's like Drummond getting 40 at that price. Can you make up for that anywhere? Whereas can you get a Jokic score at another position a lot easier than trying to make up 30 elsewhere at like shooting guard or small forward?
Yeah, typically you can. And that's why I think it's easily Drummond in cash and why it's Drummond in most lineups.
Right.
But if you're going to get away from Drummond, I don't think you build a lineup that's similar to the Drummond lineups and just play someone in place of Drummond. I think you build a completely different lineup. You hope that Jokic beats Drummond by 30 points and that, you can find good value at point guard or small forward or something like that. It's still not the best path, but it's at least a viable one. Whereas I think just saying, I'll take some other 5K center and hope he outscores Drummond and play basically all the same other guys as
that makes sense.
Drummond is a really, really tough ask.
That makes a lot of sense. What about the rest of Denver? Anything here for you?
Nothing that really stands out. Porter Jr. still reasonable, but his rebounding is down. That's been an issue basically since Gordon got there and since Jamal Murray got hurt. So not really expecting that to bounce back anytime soon. Aaron Gordon and Monte Morris are both cheap. They're okay, but nothing that I would prioritize. The only other thing I'd point out here is I think Bones Highland steps into a useful rotation role here. Denver's bench has been terrible. He played he played about 9 minutes in the second half last game, played well. He played really well in the preseason. I think that you start to see, consistent 16 to 18 minutes from Highland off the bench. Certainly doesn't make him a priority, but at 3,400 on DraftKings, it does make him usable.
What about on Memphis? Obviously, the news that's pending right now, John Morant, that's big. I mean, Tyus Jones has been getting the backup run, right? DeAnthony Melton's already a starter, getting a lot of minutes. Like it feels as though Tyus Jones has to pull big minutes. Otherwise, I know that this is one of those teams that can run a deep bench, right? Like 11 before a blowout last game, 10 before that. You will get a decent amount of players active here or in the rotation, but you would think Tyus Jones has to benefit greatly if John Morant sits.
Yeah, you would think so. He's been the backup. He's not a bad NBA player. He's started, if this is right, did Morant miss a lot of last year that I'm just forgetting?
Yeah, he missed some time for sure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He missed a decent chunk. We think over a month, right?
So this says that Tyus Jones started 49 games. I don't think that's right. But 31.2 minutes per game in the 49 games as a starter. Okay.
Yeah, you're right, because Morant only missed like 8 games.
Right. I don't know why. There we go. Okay, so Jones started 9 games last year. He averaged 28.5 minutes per game. I would assume you're getting around 30 minutes if he starts. He's only 3,300. He's about a 0.9 to 1 fantasy point per minute player as a starter. So he'd be a really, really good value if that opens up. And if we get that before lock, then for example, you play him over Delano Banton, at least in cash games, just because the minutes are more secure.
Hey guys, 386 likes puts us 114 away from 500. I know we'll get there. Thanking you in advance for this. 114 likes in the next 3 minutes. So we'll get there in 15 seconds. We have to, right? We got 2,500 people watching. So, I mean, that's just easy. Thank you, though. I know we'll do it. Adam, anything else for Memphis here? How are you playing this one?
Yeah, Jaren Jackson's DraftKings price is insane. He hasn't been great this year, but they dropped him by about $1,000 on a slate where everyone else is getting priced up with or without Morant. He's going to look good at 5,400. If Morant's out though, you see a usage bump for Jackson in Jackson's career. So one extra season, before Morant came, and then including last year, he's played about 750 minutes without Morant. He's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 28% usage rate. He's a good play either way. He's even better if Morant is out. Desmond Bane, Melton are both fine either way, but clearly better if he's out. The other guy that I'd mentioned, Steven Adams at 4,900, I think is a good value. I think you get a lot of minutes from him as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. The issue again, though, is that the center position is so deep. I'm certainly not playing Adams over Drummond. I would like to play Jokic. So I think his relative value decreased quite a bit when Embiid was ruled out.
Boom. Crushed that. Well over 500. You guys are phenomenal. Crushed. I mean, that was just too easy. Too easy. Let's get to 2,000. No, in all seriousness, though, Adam, we have 2 games to go. Josh said, as always, take your time. He thinks it's a good idea for Adam to be able to get his full thoughts out on display, which is, solid. And Josh just hates work. That's a joke. Guy puts in some serious hours here, up at 6 a.m. to do the process show, which you should watch Monday through Friday, I think 6:30 Eastern time. People have grown to love that show. It's like a cult classic, the process show, the Engleman cult. What do you got for Orlando and Minnesota, Adam? Right now, the Orlando Magic, 8.5-point dogs, 216 total against Timberwolves, who are actually winning games.
Yeah, scary amount of interest in Orlando for me. 5,700 for Wendell Carter, I think looks really, really good. He's averaging about 27 minutes per game, but he actually leads the Magic with 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. Assuming he's going to get 27 or so minutes here, and we know that there's a path to even more, I think he's really valuable at 5,700 on DraftKings. He has power forward eligibility, which is really nice as well. That's one reason to like him more than Mo Bamba, who's only a center. But also, Carter's averaging more rebound chances per game than Bamba this year, and averaging almost 5 fewer minutes per game. So, like last game, you saw the really, really big game from Bamba, a lot of rebounds. Carter only played about 17 minutes. So I'm still a little bit concerned with Bamba's rebounding. I think Carter is playing well from a fantasy standpoint. Cole Anthony's having a really good season. He's a little expensive, but I do think he's still a strong option. And then my boy Jalen Suggs, that I feel like I talk about every single day. He's not shooting well at all to start his NBA career, but he's still averaging about 30 minutes per game. He's 5,300 on DraftKings, 5,100 on FanDuel, 26% usage rate, 20% assist percentage. He's got a much higher ceiling than I think he's getting credit for, just based on his opportunities. Is he going to be a consistent shooter night to night? No, but he's getting the opportunities, and he's basically giving you typically, like, he's averaging 0.85 DraftKings points per minute over 30 minutes. He's giving you close to, 5.5 times his salary with terrible shooting. So not saying that like 5.5 times your salary gets it done or is good or anything, but it gives you an idea of, I think, sort of that just the fact that he's priced to his floor a lot more so than to what he can actually do on nights that his shot is falling.
Where do you slot Karl Anthony Towns in all of this today?
He's a good option. It's just really tough to prioritize because he's the same position as Jokic and Drummond, and he's basically the same price as Drummond. So on DraftKings, we have I'm trying to pull it up now. What's the difference? We have Jokic at 19%. We have
Karl Anthony Towns at 7.6.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those where if your lineup is chalky or elsewhere, feel free to go Towns over Jokic. Hope that Jokic, that's a blowout or foul trouble or something like that. But if you've already made a couple contrarian plays, then I prefer Jokic to Towns.
Do you like anything else? I mean, like an Anthony Edwards here or anything from Minnesota that we haven't touched on?
Not really. I mean, Russell and Edwards both have high ceilings. They are facing an absolutely terrible Orlando defense. They should be able to have good games, but they don't really stand out to me here.
Let's wrap this one up with OKC and the LA Clippers. Oklahoma City Thunder, 12.5-point dogs, Adam, against the Clippers, who are in the bottom of the Western Conference right now, by the way, towards the bottom, at least 210 total. Obviously, they're better than they've played. You would assume that they smoked them today, but that's yet to be seen. Do you love anything from either side of this game that you think the audience absolutely needs to know about?
Yeah, there's a lot of value in this game, unfortunately. Reggie Jackson, 6K on DraftKings, Bledsoe, 4,700. They both just look like good values here. Oklahoma City's one of the worst defenses in the league. Jackson leads the Clippers in minutes per game. Bledsoe's at 26 minutes per game. They both just look like pretty solid values. Batum looks okay. Hartenstein at 3K. He's a center, though, so not really the position I'm looking to punt. And then sort of burying the lead, Paul George is expensive, but he's also playing really, really well this year. And not that I care all that much about individual defenders. That's typically something where I don't really care. People ask and I don't care. Lou Dort is out for OKC. He is almost without a doubt the guy that they would have been throwing at Paul George. He is a really, really good on-ball defender. They don't have him. I mean, I don't really think they have an answer for George outside of, double and tripling him and making him get rid of the ball. But I think that it's a very, very good spot for George. If you wanted, for example, to go Drummond plus one of those other high upside centers instead of Jokic, I do think using Paul George to pay up at small forward where the options are a lot weaker makes some sense. On the other side for OKC, it's basically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey. You have Dort out, so I think potentially that opens up more minutes for Giddey. He's produced over a fantasy point per minute this year. Gilgeous-Alexander's production's down a little bit this year, but he's still got a 27% usage rate. He's just losing some assists to Giddey, but he's still averaging 33 minutes per game. If this game is somehow competitive, you're probably getting 37 minutes from Gilgeous-Alexander. He's priced for his 33 minutes. So I think both of those guys look like pretty solid options.
All right. Top option overall on this slate, favorite value option, not named Andre Drummond. Then we turn this over to Josh and Greg.
I was going to say my answer to all of those is Andre Drummond, but
yeah, but that's just too easy.
Yeah. Jokic at the top. If I can't go Drummond for value right now, I think it's 3K Banton.
Okay. Fair enough, man. I like it. Josh and Greg coming up next. And remember, free content on the site today, player projections for NBA, NFL showdown ranks, and NHL ownership projections. Don't go anywhere. These guys got you covered. Any injury news, breaking news, any questions you got coming up till 7 p.m. lock. It's the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Peace.
Earlier that was in between Damian and Boucher.
Okay. No decision on the starter from Blake Murphy right now. Trying to figure out how to keep second unit of Svi, Banton, Boucher, Birch together.
Important.
Yeah. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, November 1st. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by Yahoo Sports. We have 54 minutes to go until lock. We're waiting on some news. I hope that it's not a wild one over the next 54 minutes, although all bets are off on days where 3 games lock at 7 and 3 games lock at 7:30. We can get inundated at 6:45. And we are going to get, it's not going to be fun. It's just not. So hit the like button now, because I might not have the ability to ask you later, and it would really help for those likes to go up. Let's start here, though. Greg, how are you?
Good. We were talking about, I don't know if our mics were on for that point or not, but we're trying to figure out which of these shitty players the Toronto Raptors are ultimately going to end up starting today with Scotty Barnes had a shockingly good start to his rookie season. He's out. And at least early in the day, I saw that it was in between that it was likely to be Chris Boucher, but it also could potentially be Banton that was going to be starting for them. But then you just read a tweet from one of the Raptors beat reporters that apparently Nick Nurse wants to keep his crappy bench unit together. But yeah, that's news that shapes the entire DFS slate.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing here is starters are TBD. Nurse says they're considering a few options, including the possibility of going with someone outside of the current rotation to keep their second unit of Banton, Svi, Boucher, and Birch together. They've been playing well.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever could you do if your shitty team doesn't have that group of players still playing together? I mean, I guess it's not the end of the world if you're like, hey, let's just start Malachi Flynn. I thought Flynn should have been in the rotation this year. He played fairly well towards the end of last year. So maybe they go really crazy and start Malachi Flynn, which just the entire slate then kind of goes to shit. We have to figure out everything. But yeah, it's funny to me to see that Nick Nurse being like, we really need to keep this group of 5 random players together.
Right. Like if it pops up right now that it's Isak Bonga, are you really shocked? Because I'm not.
At this point, no, not based on that tweet. If it's Sam Decker, if it's Bonga, if it's Dragic or Malachi, really any of those names wouldn't shock me at this point. I was pretty sure earlier in the day that I have it set as Boucher right now, but that's with no confidence. It could really be anybody. And no matter what it is, we're probably going to have to figure this out at some point during the show.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it ends up being probably Svi. I got him in for 24 minutes, and I think that I could feel pretty comfortable not making a giant change there, because I don't necessarily think whoever starts is like a guaranteed closing lineup guy either, which is an even bigger piece for all of this. But we'll wait on that for a bit. Let's just dive into the slate, I guess. We'll talk a little bit about the guards. And in particular, we can talk about some of the guards that are picking up the most ownership on today's slate. I'm going to be looking at it from a FanDuel perspective. Do you have DraftKings queued up, or do you want me to go the other way?
It doesn't matter to me. We could do whichever.
Okay. I really wish that like both sites had a handshake agreement that everyone had the same position. Or I wish FanDuel would do something like make Paul Reed not a shooting guard. But, you know, we can't ask for everything.
No. FanDuel is just, but that's like the only position Paul Reed hasn't played this year. Also, he's played minutes at every position but shooting guard. And FanDuel's like, yeah, shooting guard.
Yeah. I saw, I think Meansy had a tweet earlier that it was just like, he's played 10% of his minutes at small forward, 70 at power forward, and the other 20 at center. So naturally, he's just shooting guard eligible on FanDuel.
Yeah, of course.
This is so dumb. All right. So on FanDuel right now, guys that are picking up a bunch of ownership, Dame Lillard, because he's still 8,300. TJ McConnell, no Malcolm Brogdon any longer. Very different play. DeMar DeRozan, Reggie Jackson, Jalen Suggs, Anthony Edwards. Am I naming anybody that you're pretty interested in today? Is there any overlap on DraftKings that you're looking to get to?
Well, I have to refresh the ownership now because it shows the numbers I was looking at are different than the ones that you were looking at. So yeah, TJ McConnell's become much more popular, but I mean, still not to a crazy level. He's 25% owned right now on FanDuel. DraftKings, he's at 22%. I mean, the question here becomes is how much do we look at the last couple of games from TJ McConnell and just buy into that as being what this guy is when he starts? Because he's been so good in the past when he started, especially last year when he was with the Pacers, that it's bizarre what's happened this year in terms of just his lack of total production, his lack of shot attempts, his lack of doing anything really of note from a fantasy perspective. Certainly something that has not worked out well for me on TJ McConnell slates, but I'm still going back to him because what else am I going to do, particularly on DraftKings at that price point? I can't buy into that like TJ McConnell's a 0.5 fantasy points per minute player. And if you give him any kind of reasonable projection from fantasy point per minute perspective, he's going to grade out really well when he's that cheap on DraftKings. So I'm still getting to him overweight to the field, and I think he should be more popular. I'm not too scared off by the last couple of games, but has that changed how you view him at all?
He's my third most exposed player right now. We got him at 25% on FanDuel. If that maintains, like, let's just say no news comes out, I'll have 65% TJ McConnell or somewhere in that 60% range. I'm just going to smash him because I don't really see a reason why I wouldn't. Only guys that I have more than him as of right now, Tobias Harris, Andre Drummond. I'm sure that neither of those two things are shocking you. We'll get to those guys in a bit. Dame is my fourth. I mentioned him before. Very different play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. 8,300. I'm going back to it because when he breaks out, and I mean when he breaks out, I want to be there for it.
Yeah, and once again with Damian Lillard, he's just not making shots. It's not like he's not taking shots. It's actually his assist rate is way up this year. But the games for him this year, his usage rate's still 28%, 34, 35, 28, 25. He just cannot buy a bucket. And Damian Lillard is not somebody all of a sudden like, hey, he can't make shots anymore. He's going to be fine. It's just a random kind of fluky thing to start the season. I know a lot of people are buying into this with some kind of narrative is like, hey, look, Damian Lillard doesn't want to be in Portland. He said nothing but he wants to be in Portland over the course of his entire career. He said that in every interview in the offseason. On Twitter, he got in an argument with Henry Abbott where Henry Abbott was like, Damian Lillard wants to be traded. And Damian Lillard was like, no, I don't want to be traded. And everybody just sided with Henry Abbott on Twitter at that point and was like, yeah, Dame wants to be traded. He's shown no indication to me he wants to be traded. I think it's just random shooting. He's priced appropriately on DraftKings, not FanDuel.
Any guys that you're seeing that are picking up some ownership from DraftKings that you want to touch on that we haven't talked about yet? I'm sure there's a few.
Yeah. So some of the most popular plays on DraftKings. The ownership's relatively, because there's so much ownership going on Andre Drummond that's just become a free spot for everybody. So just to give out some of these ownership projections right now, and we're talking about guards right now, but Andre Drummond is 80% owned right now, projected by the field. And that just means there's one less roster spot basically available everywhere else. So the only other player projected over 20% on DraftKings is TJ McConnell. And then on FanDuel, there's a little bit more of spread out ownership because Drummond's a little bit more expensive, but still the most popular guards on FanDuel, it's Damian Lillard at 26%, Trae Young at 26%. For a 9-game slate, there really is not that much crazy chalk outside of Drummond.
One guy that we sort of need to touch on, and it's more of a holistic discussion than anything we can do right now, would be the trickle-down effect of what happens if Ja Morant is out. For right now, I have him in, and normally I'm pretty quick to take a guy that gets added to the injury report as questionable. I'm usually pretty quick to take that person out of my lineups. I think more than 50-50, that person does end up out. Ja went through shoot around this morning. He's not the type of guy that misses a lot of time. Like, it was just a sprained ankle last year, I believe, that cost him 8 games. So I think that he powers through this and plays. So I'm not making any changes. I don't know where you stand right now in terms of if you're moving forward with Ja in or out. Obviously, Tyus Jones becomes an interesting play, though, if he ends up out.
Yeah, and also I'm usually pretty quick to bet these games in this kind of situation. So when Joel Embiid was ruled out earlier in the day, I immediately bet Portland at plus 6.5 at the time. I did not bet the Denver Nuggets when Ja Morant was downgraded to questionable. I'm like you. I'm just kind of assuming he plays, and there wasn't enough of me feeling like he was going to be out to actually want to go ahead and bet the Denver Nuggets in this matchup. So this is certainly a situation where I think a lot of people are going to be assuming he plays. So there's going to be a lot of late swapping set up if he's ruled out, but I'm hoping that's not the case because that would really change me to overhaul everything. Tyus Jones, I do assume, would end up starting. D'Anthony Melton and Desmond Bane probably both pick up a little bit of extra usage. They've both been really good so far this year. Same goes for Jaren Jackson Jr. I think he could be a little bit of an under the radar play, picking up extra usage. But once again, I'm assuming that Morant plays today.
Yep. Okay. So we're on the same page there. I don't really think that I have anything else to add. The good news is for me right now is that it's not like I'm swapping out of Ja. He's 9,900 on FanDuel. I imagine I don't have much. As of right now, I have a total of 4% going to the Memphis Grizzlies. So they're just not a team that I am getting to. Darren Unger with the super chat. Favorite FanDuel small forward plays not named Harris. Well, I guess I can get to that pretty quickly for you guys, considering I have it right here. My most exposed guy is Harris. Second most for right now, Jason Tatum. And then Justin Holiday for 4,300 is 2.5% owned. He's been playing 30 plus minutes pretty easily. I don't think that he's a particularly good per minute fantasy player. But if he's going to fall
your camera turned off, Josh.
Did it really? Yeah, we're back to doing this again. That's fun.
Oh yeah, only when I'm on with you. It's the one show a week we do now. It's just for old time's sake. It's going to shut off on us.
Well, you know the drill then. Either way, Justin Holiday is a guy that I'm looking at basically no ownership. To me, that looks good in a FanDuel GPP. After that, small forward falls off quite a bit. It's basically Harris, and then I don't have a ton of interest in general small forwards. Like, I'm getting a lot more, I assume, power forwards or shooting guards because the rest of my small forward exposure is light.
I like OG Anunoby. I'm still pretty high on Michael Porter Jr. He's still only $6,200 over on FanDuel, a little more expensive on DraftKings. He is priced at same price, $6,200. I thought he was a little more expensive, but
he's fourth for me at small forward. So we're on the same page.
Yeah, fair enough. So Michael Porter Jr., it's a thing also where I'm just throwing out everything we've seen so far this year. It's a small sample size, Michael Porter Jr. And I've said the same thing, 3 or 4 Denver Nuggets slates in a row now. He's going to bounce back, and we're going to see a really strong season for Michael Porter Jr. Maybe he's not going to be the all-star that we thought he could have been entering the season, but there should be extra usage available towards him with Jamal Murray out. I just can't really explain what's happened to start the year. He just maybe came in not in the best of shape or something like that, but he's going to get it together eventually. Too much talent there for him to not eventually pick up his fantasy production. What are you doing with OG Anunoby tonight? Because I'm looking at some of the on-off court numbers for the Toronto Raptors, and it seems like he benefits the most with Scotty Barnes off the court. But with that said, it's a very small sample size. We're only looking at see, how many minutes is it that he's played this year with Barnes off the court? It is 73, and he has a 25.6% usage rating. He scores 1.13 DraftKings points per minute in those minutes. So I'm overweight to the field on OG Anunoby. It feels like the price is a little bit too high for me, but still, I project him out well, so I'm getting to him overweight to the field. Josh, your camera stopped working again, but what do you make of Anunoby with Barnes out? Because he's somebody I'm struggling with.
Ooh, you know what's really exciting? Now I can't even turn it back on.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we'll test that once I kick this to you. I'm basically neutral. I have 11% of Anunoby right now. He's 16% owned on FanDuel. He is 7,300. That's a pretty crowded area for ownership. And I'm getting either significantly higher or significantly lower. So we've got Demar Derozan at 20% ownership there. OG, Shea, even Gordon Hayward pulling some ownership. I'm getting to Spencer Dinwiddie at 5%, and then I'm going a little bit higher. So Anthony Edwards, Fred VanVleet, Zach LaVine. I'm in that range, and I'm sort of running away from the ownership that's being pulled there. I don't have an actual problem with OG Anunoby in this spot. Like, the minutes are there. He can provide a ceiling. This just happens to be the way that the salaries are shaken out for me here.
Yeah, fair enough. And the matchup against the Knicks is far from ideal. It's one of those things where when a player gets ruled out this early in the season, especially when it's a rookie like Scotty Barnes and it's a total new look Toronto Raptors team, no Kyle Lowry in the picture, Pascal Siakam isn't there. I feel like I've become a little bit over-reliant on small sample sizes, and Anunoby has played well with them off the bench. So to me, I'm just getting to him a little bit overweight to the field. I have him right around 20% right now, but still somebody I just was really uncertain with. I feel like I'm either way over or under projecting Anunoby.
Anybody that you're well over on at guard that we haven't talked about yet? And by the way, I'm working on my camera here, but I don't know if we're getting this back, so I might just put up like a picture.
All good. Oh, that would be nice. Could we get what would be a good picture of Josh put up? Could we get the picture of you with the mustache?
I don't have that. I mean, I guess I do have that. Yeah, maybe I'll work on it. We'll see how quickly I can get that onto my computer.
All right. Well, whatever. I think that would be something. If we have to put something up as a placeholder, at least I would find that entertaining and enjoyable just off the top of my head. You mentioned his name, but we didn't really talk about him in depth, and that's Anthony Edwards. I've been a little bit higher on Edwards for this entire season than the majority of the public. I also have him in a lot of my best ball teams for that same reason. He's somebody that I projected to take a pretty big step forward for Minnesota this year. And you kind of think by looking at the team that there isn't that much usage to go around when they have Karl Anthony Towns, when they have Anthony Edwards, when they have D'Angelo Russell. That's kind of where all the production is going towards. There's nobody else that's really taking all that many significant amount of shots. So Anthony Edwards to this point this year, his usage has remained pretty high on a consistent basis, over 30% for the year. And maybe there was a chance with D'Angelo Russell, full season of him, Malik Beasley in the mix, we're going to see a step back in usage for Anthony Edwards, but it hasn't been the case. It's actually taken a step forward. So Edwards this year is averaging nearly 40 fantasy points per game, usage rate over 30%. I like him a lot as an option that's fairly low owned. And I assume that you kind of like him too, just because you mentioned his name before.
I have 15% right now. I think that if Ja ends up getting ruled out, I end up getting a lot more of that Minnesota game, but I'm relatively neutral on Edwards as of this moment. Guys that I'm just like right now most over the field on. McConnell, clearly. Lillard, clearly. I'm getting to a bunch of Derek White. He's 6,100 on FanDuel. I'm getting to Josh Giddey more than I want to. He's 3.5% owned. I've been getting to Giddey a lot more than most people as of late anyway. Levine, which I like. Dinwiddie, which I like. Maxey, which I like. Terrence Ross, which I don't like. Those are some of the guys that I'm taking some bigger stands on in GPPs. Do you have any major fades at guard?
I agree with you on Josh Giddey. He's somebody else who I really like a ton this year. And the minutes have been a little more up and down than I feel comfortable with. If you look at the last handful of games, 20 minutes, 34, 27, 32, 28. But like you, I'm overweight to the field on Josh Giddey, and I think there's a lot of upside. He's a very fantasy-friendly looking game, just his ability to score, assist, rebound, a little bit of defensive stats mixed in. So I'm also on Josh Giddey at what seems like maybe a little bit high of a salary, but once again, I haven't projected fairly well.
No Dort too, which I think helps to solidify. I mean, granted, that probably means they're going to get beat by 600, but like if it's close, I think Giddey plays pretty easily over 30 minutes.
Let's see, fades at the guard position. You know, it's hard to look at somebody and say like anybody's crazy over owned because there's two players on the entire slate on DraftKings that are over 20% owned, and Andre Drummond and TJ McConnell. I think that's more than justified. So there's just not anybody that I look at as being problematically owned. Do you feel differently?
Hit me with that again. I'm still trying to figure out how to make my picture be the background. I don't know how to do that.
Fair enough. So I was saying that Andre Drummond is 80% on DraftKings. TJ McConnell's 22%. And there's nobody else on the slate that's over 20% on DraftKings. So the next most popular guard, it's Trae Young at 17%. So with that in mind, I just don't find anybody that I need a fade for ownership reasons because everybody just seems about appropriate because I think the chalk is sensible. I'm overweight to the field on TJ McConnell. That's what I wanted to ask you. Is there just any guard that you feel differently about where you look at their ownership and be like, no, this is a number that's too high?
Let me take a quick peek. I want to see if there's anybody that at guard that I'm not getting. So like I basically don't have Shea today. Mm-hmm. I don't have much Paul George. George is 10-1 on FanDuel. That's just a harder justification for me, given the way that the lineups are shaking out. Shea, I'm just scared because I don't trust the team. He has so little around him to help him. And I don't entirely know there are going to be days where he just blows that out of the water because the game stays competitive. I mean, we're talking about a team that's losing by like 16 every time that they play. They have we're going to have to approach them very differently over the next couple months. But right now, I just don't want to be there if Shea is getting so heavily owned. I'd rather just hope that his price somehow goes up and I can get him on days where he's not as owned. If that comes back to bite me, I'm not surprised. I think he's incredible. I don't trust him on a day like today.
Yeah, I don't have him in my player pool on DraftKings. I'm underweight to him on FanDuel, and 7,200 price tag. If you would have told me that we were going to have SGA at 7,200 on FanDuel 2 weeks into the season, I would think that's a price I'd be all over because I've been pretty high on him so far this year. But they also have a really low team total on this slate, which kind of drags guys down. So the total in that game is 210. That's the second lowest on the slate. The only game that's kind of in the same realm as it is the 208 total in the Knicks-Raptors game. But the Clippers are 12-point favorites against the Thunder. So their team total is just ridiculously low. There's also a little bit of blowout risk. So yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I'm not getting the SGA right now as much as I have on some previous slates.
I'm desperately trying to get this image as my profile picture because I have it now. I've got the mustache pic that was requested, but you can't have I'm trying to like bring the quality of the picture down. It has to be like relatively small, and that's not helping me so far. So we're down to 1.83. Got it. Nice. I think that I know how to do this, so we're about to find out.
Moment of truth. By the way,
I think it's a lot better than it just saying Josh Engleman on the screen.
It's some people would prefer to see that than your face, but while you're trying to figure that out,
more people would prefer to see that than my face.
We do. Oh, there it is. Oh, this is perfect. This is the ideal version of the show. In my personal opinion, we did get it. You're looking spiffy there. At least
there we go.
At least on my end. On my end, it works. I don't know if it's showing up on the stream, but that is we did get a super chat here. And if there's anything,
I'm back and ready to go now. I could actually hit this and host the show.
Oh, okay. I feel like I was doing okay there, but it's good to have you. It's good to have you back on board. But I will read off the super chat by Andrew Biggs, which is he said that he's getting to way too much of Paul Reed, over 50%. Looks like the boom bust tool likes him. How much is too much in your opinion? Well, 50% Paul Reed is that's way too much in my opinion. I'm not really getting to Paul Reed. Are you?
No, I don't have any. One, he's a shooting guard on FanDuel, which is a decision unto itself. Two, there's too many different ways Philly can go for me to want to get to Paul Reed at all. I get the idea of maybe wanting to have, 5% or something if you think he gets the straight backup run or if Drummond gets into foul trouble. But I mean, they can go, especially in this matchup against Portland, where Portland can have non-Nurkic guys out there and it doesn't matter. It wouldn't surprise me if they went small. I know they talked about it. If they went small and George Niang picked up a couple extra minutes there, very easily, Charles Bassey can be that guy today. They can go to they can stretch this out if they need to, bring more defense on the court, play Thibault a little bit more if they're going small. I don't want to go crazy for someone like Paul Reed. I gave him 14 minutes. That's meaningless on a FanDuel slate. For $3K on DraftKings, I think it's a little bit different, but I can't 50%. No, that's 45% too high as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would say if you're just playing him as a one-off, that's sensible. I don't have him on my player pool though. He's only 3,000 the flat min on DraftKings, but I only gave him 14 minutes. He hasn't played double-digit minutes yet this year, and that's just not enough of a projection for me to get towards him. If I wanted to, sure, I wouldn't have an issue if I forced myself to get him into a couple of lineups, but he just doesn't make the cut for me right now. We've got a lot of cheap plays that are viable on DraftKings, and there's not that many guys I'm dying to spend up for either. I think Paul George is a little expensive. You mentioned him being expensive on FanDuel, but DK is 10,700. So I don't have a whole lot of him. I don't have a whole lot of guys like Karl-Anthony Towns and Nikola Jokic. I have fairly balanced lineups today, so I didn't really see a need to get to Paul Reed.
All righty. Guys, hit that like button for the mustache pick. I think that's a decent reason to run the likes up on this show. We do have NFL Live Before Lock coming up after this, 7:15, Monday Night Football, Chiefs and Giants. We've got free content today that I definitely didn't update in this, but luckily I still have the daily marketing plan open. NBA player projections are free. NFL Showdown ranks are free, and NHL ownership projections. Now, let's move it over to the forward line where, to me, it's very clear Tobias Harris is the best play at forward on FanDuel. How do you feel about Tobias Harris for a slightly elevated price tag on DraftKings?
The salary makes 0 sense. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand what got him to 9,100, so I don't have any interest in Tobias Harris. I'm kind of curious to look last year.
You don't have any interest in Tobias Harris?
At 9,100, no.
Okay.
Like, you still think 9,100 is a reasonable price tag?
I mean, what's his ownership?
I just have him projected so far away from being a viable play at 9,100. And he's still projected for 10% ownership on DK.
Okay. That's where I have him. He was 10% in my Sims at 9,100. I would get to him. To me, I don't think that he would be a straight 0. I think I would have about 10%.
Yeah, I don't have him on a player pool. There's just other guys I'd rather get to. I'd rather find the space. If it absolutely comes down to me playing a stars and scrubs lineup, I'd rather play Paul George at 10-7. I'd rather play like Trae Young is about the same salary as him. Karl-Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, those guys aren't that much more expensive. So I just wasn't able to fit Tobias Harris into my player pool. I don't understand how he got to be priced all the way up to 9,100. I'm kind of curious what his most expensive salary was all of last year. They
must have known Embiid was out.
Well, no, then they would have priced Andre Drummond not close to the minimum.
No, yeah, I was obviously kidding. You can't see my face, my real face right now. So there was a smile and a bit of sarcasm attached to my facial expressions.
Yeah, that picture just makes it look like you were one of the 10 million people that dressed up as Ted Lasso yesterday.
I wouldn't do that for money. I've never seen the show, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, you do that does look a lot like him, that picture.
I mean, if you want to tell me that I look like Jason Sudeikis, I'm here for it.
With that mustache a little bit, I could definitely see.
Tobias Harris is out.
Is he really out?
Noah Levick, who he covers the Sixers for NBC Sports Philly, out for health and safety protocols. Furkan Korkmaz will start. So holy shit, let's buckle up. Let's stop talking about everything we're doing and let's walk through this. Yep, everything changes now.
Right,
so we take Tobias Harris out. Furkan Korkmaz is playing 30 minutes, and it's just become what I would imagine to be one of the better plays today.
All right. I'm going to the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm just looking at what their usage looks like with Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid off the court. I imagine it's not that many minutes.
No. And don't forget to take Ben Simmons off as well. You're going to need it. I mean, Maxey, Shake. I don't know who else. I mean, Drummond now looks better than he did before, which is pretty hard to do.
He was in 100% of my lines. What am I going to do? Start playing him in 2 roster spots? Like he's going to be. He's just play Andre Drummond.
Did Matisse Thybulle just become a really interesting play today?
I can tell you, I remember a couple of times last year, the Matisse Thybulle became a play 30 minutes before lock for us last year, and it didn't go well in either of those times. But yes, he most likely did.
All right, so let's think this through. Tyrese Maxey's going to play 32 minutes today now, right? At least, north of 30.
So he's going to, for sure, he's going to have to play. And he's just going to have to soak up a lot of usage when he's on the court. I also have, all right, here we go. I've got the usage numbers for these guys for the last 2 years when we have no Simmons, no Harris, no Embiid on the court. Shake Milton leads the team in usage, 32.2%. Then we've got Tyrese Maxey at 26.4%. Furkan Korkmaz, 24.2. By the way, apologies to whoever was shouting out Paul. I'm going to end up playing Paul Reed now.
Yeah, so I assume I am at least. So we're going to see, let's say 30 minutes from Drummond. Who do you see as the backup center? Paul Reed? Or does this now make Charles Bassey like more likely to be on the floor?
I think that it's probably just more small ball minutes with Thibault. We saw that last year. We saw games where they started Thibault at center when Embiid was out, and I think that Thibault plays the backup center minutes now.
I think that would be Reed in that scenario if we're being technical, but I get where you're going. If you're going to play Paul Reed, you have to assume that he's playing at the 5.
Well, I think it's just you assume there's more small ball lineups, and they're just no real center. It's just there's 5 guys who are long and athletic that are on the court.
Okay, so let's have this discussion then. How many minutes do you think Paul Reed plays? Assuming we're just going to say Andre Drummond plays 30.
I'd say probably around 20 is reasonable. Assume that he shares the court with Drummond for some of those minutes, and he's on the court for a lot of the time that Drummond isn't on the floor.
That works for me. I had him at 18. You went to 20. I changed it. 24 for Thibault since he's not starting.
Did we get a starting lineup?
Gary Harris ruled out. I'd been assuming that the entire time. I don't think that changes anything for me.
All right, let's see. What do we have from the news god? Oh yeah. So it is Korkmaz starting in his place.
Yeah.
So I'd missed that part of the tweet. I was just fixated on the part where it was Tobias Harris out. But so Korkmaz, by the way, Korkmaz is also the best value play of the group, other than Drummond, in terms of guys that benefit from Tobias Harris being out. Thibault, I think 24 minutes is probably reasonable for Thibault.
Yeah. I'm really curious about Charles Bassey playing because I don't know who the 10th guy in this rotation is going to be. Whether it's him or Isaiah Joe seems reasonable to me as the 10th guy here.
I'm going with Isaiah Joe.
Okay. So then I'm going to 86 the minutes from Bassey, which gives me very little minutes where Paul Reed is on the floor without Andre Drummond. And then I'm going to say that Isaiah Joe plays like 12, and I think that's fine. Korkmaz for 28, Danny Green for 28. I don't want those guys to show up as if it's a problem. Like Korkmaz isn't going to matter, but I don't want to accidentally get too much Danny Green because I gave him an extra minute.
I think no worse fate in the world than accidentally playing too much Danny Green.
What did you say Maxey's usage rate was for minutes when those guys aren't on?
It is 26.4%.
Okay. I'm just going to go to 24, but it's not really going to matter here. So at 20 minutes, I'm getting all of the Paul Reed.
That's not the end of the world, especially not on DraftKings. So that's going to be different. TK versus FanDuel.
Yeah, I got for FanDuel. He's popping pretty aggressively. I got him at 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I should probably walk that back a little bit just because
I'm going to give him the 18 minutes you had said instead of the 20 just to limit my exposure to him a little bit. I have no real good feel for what this rotation is going to look like.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. And if Paul Reed puts up a score that I needed, I'm willing to eat that down the line. Furkan Korkmaz is popping pretty big for me, but he is 4,200 on FanDuel. Maxey at 54 is now becoming a guy that I'm going to end up with a lot of. Who did we screw it up with last year? Did we try to take Maxey and shake blast it or the other way?
So there was a slate last year where I remember we were both really heavy on one of them, and then the other ended up starting. I think we were really heavy on Maxey. Then Milton ended up starting, so we switched who we really liked for that slate, and it didn't matter. Like it was late enough news where neither of them were picking up that much ownership. And then what happened is the guy we were on originally ended up having a really big game, and the guy we swapped to did shit.
That'll do it. All right, I'm going to assume that whatever I just put in here is going to work. By the way, McConnell, Duarte, LeVert, Sabonis, Turner starting for the Indiana Pacers.
And
Man, that's one I didn't expect to come. So Phillies, Joel Embiid is going to be Smash City this next game that he plays, huh?
I think he's kind of damaged goods at this point a little bit.
No Tobias Harris in the next one, probably, right? Health and safety protocols. He's not coming back for the next game.
Yeah, it depends. It does depend on his price and all that. But I mean, just kind of like overarching, I'm pretty concerned about Joel Embiid's health moving forward. For what it's worth, I bet the Sixers at 9-1 to miss the playoffs.
There we go. Wow. All right. Yeah. Maxey is now going to be like my number. If I were running contenders again, Maxey would be my number 2. I don't think that's crazy, right? At 5,400 on FanDuel.
I really like Shake now.
How many minutes does he get?
It's not so much that I'm confident in the minutes. I'm really curious to see the ownership update when we get one. Because if he's going to be low owned, I'm just looking at this usage for him last year. And if he's going to be a guy the field isn't getting to, when he had a 32.2% usage rate over the last season plus in 549 minutes with no Harrison, Embiid, and Simmons on the court, I mean, he really could crush in his minutes on court. Probably like him at 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. And that's a sample size of over 500 minutes.
I bumped him up to 22 minutes. I don't want to get too much Shake, but I'd like him to be in the mix a little bit. How the hell? I just gave Tyrese Maxey more usage, and now somehow, miraculously, I'm getting less of him. How is that possible?
Beats me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know either. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't get it.
All right.
But,
come on, ownership update.
Oh, you're going to have to wait 10 minutes for that one.
I know, but I would really like, I mean, because I really would like to make some decisions based off that, just in terms of if somebody here is way more popular, other than, like Korkmaz or Drummond, if there's somebody off the rails that's either picking up no ownership or a lot of ownership, I'm probably going to want to try to jam that guy in.
Yeah, I'll say this much. Like, if Paul Reed's getting any ownership and Shake Milton isn't, like, then go to more Shake in those situations, because I don't think that we can be super confident in what's about to happen, other than you got to play a lot of Andre Drummond.
Yeah, it's been Drummond. And I feel the same way about Korkmaz at 3,500 on DraftKings. A little bit different DK versus FanDuel, because it's the $700 salary difference. But Drummond, Korkmaz, especially, play both these guys in cash games. If anybody's listening to this and building a cash lineup, you're playing Korkmaz and Drummond in cash games. And then in terms of the other guys on the team, I don't know that I feel super confident on any of them in cash, but for tournament purposes, I'm really curious to see where some of this ownership lands.
I think I feel pretty comfortable playing Maxey in cash, but I would have to run the crunch. I mean, I think he's primed to take every shot when he's out there.
Not out of the realm of possibility. I'm going to ask you also now, how does this impact how you view, I mean, we already like Damian Lillard a lot on FanDuel already, but does this impact how you view anybody from the Portland side of the game?
No, I don't think so.
Fair enough.
I mean, other than the fact that like Portland is now going to be slightly more favored and should have slightly more fantasy points because that line shifts. No, I don't. That doesn't really change anything for me. Does it for you?
I think I'm going to bump up the projections a little bit from the Portland guys, just from a standpoint of I want the added correlation there. If I'm already going to have so much exposure to the Sixers guys now, I want to have some more exposure to the Portland side just in case the game shoots out, higher scoring, something happens where it goes to overtime. I think I could start spending my money on that Portland plus 6.5, right?
Yeah, I think you should feel pretty good about that. This is wild. I mean, of all the stuff that was going to happen, Tobias Harris being out for health and safety protocols was not on the radar.
No. I was the thing I was really thinking is like, boy, I really hope that I'm not on the wrong side of this Marant situation. And now I don't even care about Marant at this moment.
I'm going to hit on a Yahoo read, and then I think we're just going to kind of open this one up for whatever we want to do for the final 15 minutes, because this has just dramatically changed everything. So, hey, everybody, you guys should go play on Yahoo Sports. I can do the read and just stare at it, too, because I forgot I'm a still frame. So we've partnered with Yahoo this season to bring some good offers, and we've got one in the description of this video. If you click the link that you see in the description for Yahoo, make a deposit, and then play. That's all you got to do. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest. We will reach out to you with a coupon code. Now, for immediate access, you can email support@awesemo.com. We could probably hook you up there. You can also get a free $10 to enter any Yahoo contest. We've got a ton of tools and projections specifically designed for Yahoo to give you your best shot at winning. So make sure you're taking advantage of this deal. Who doesn't want a free month of Awesemo Plus for basically nothing? You just get to play more DFS. Sounds great to me.
Yeah, and all you have to do is make a deposit over Yahoo. It could be, $10. Make a deposit, $10, enter account, which also those Yahoo contests Sundays for football, they've got guaranteed overlay every week. So there's no reason to not take advantage of it.
A1 Andy with the super chat. Randall or Tatum, single entry tournament. No site given, which sucks. Tatum for me.
It is Randall for me. Yeah, I've been pretty high on Randall so far this year. It is a lot to do with just how many minutes Tibbs is willing to play him. Also, did you assume that Noel plays or does not play today?
I put Noel in, but those minutes just came directly out of Taj Gibson's bucket, so I don't think it matters.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out, then Randall is a little more likely to play those 40-plus minutes that we see from him sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, recent minutes for Randall, he hasn't gotten quite the same minutes he did last year, but still, it's an absurd workload. So I prefer Randall. He's one of my favorite pay up options on the slate.
I cannot believe Tobias Harris just got ruled out. What a load of nonsense! It's really annoying. It's an easy fix. Like, we got plenty of time. I don't mind all that much, but I was plenty happy just playing like 70% Tobias Harris. So it has flipped. I don't know what it's going to look like when I paste my new stuff in. Like, all bets are off for who I'm actually exposed to. Everything we talked about for 40 minutes, meaningless.
Yeah, oh, and we didn't even get that. We don't even have that dumb Raptors lineup yet.
No, we do not.
Which does the Sixers? And the Sixers game locks at 7, not 7:30.
Yeah, it's incredibly inconvenient across the board here for everything that we've got going. Hit me with some of your center exposures that aren't Andre Drummond, since Andre Drummond, I assume, is in everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I have him in all my lineups today. So here's actually something that I did not expect was going to happen coming into the show. That's really happened as a side effect, I guess we'll say, a result of the Sixers value that just opened up. I'm getting to a lot more of Nikola Jokic and Karl-Anthony Towns than I did before we started the show when I had originally entered my lineups. I just have more salary to play with. So some of those lineups where I had guys like Wendell Carter Jr., Miles Turner, I liked a lot. I was just able to upgrade to plays like Nikola Jokic and Karl-Anthony Towns. So that's something that's been a trickle-down effect that I didn't anticipate.
That's not going to matter all that much for me, generally speaking, just because it's FanDuel. I don't have the utility spot. So what I was getting for Drummond before is just going to maintain. I assume it pushes up some of the higher playing point guards, shooting guards, small forwards to an extent, just because I'm going to open up that. But I guess I'm just going to be a lot more stars than Scrubsy now is my guess. I just ran my crunch, but I can't really do anything until we get our ownership update because there's too many, all these Philly value dudes are just going to fly to the top of everything, that 0.5% ownership or whatever the hell that I have them at. So
yeah, that's what I've been waiting on too, until I submit the final version of my lineup. So I'm sitting on 25% Shake Milton now, and he's the guy that I think is most apt to go up or down for me, depending on what his ownership is.
Ruben Mitchell with the super chat. Bamba or Mobley? FanDuel single entry, last man in. For me, I don't know what the rest of your lineup looks like, but for me, it's unquestionably Mobley.
So yeah, well, it depends how contrarian the rest of your lineup is, because Bamba, although with that said, we've had Bamba projected to be a little bit higher owned than he's generally ended up being on a lot of slates. But right now, most recent run, we have him projected for 36.5% ownership. So just given that he's that popular, I think it depends. Like if the rest of your lineup is Miles Turner, Andre Drummond, Damian Lillard, TJ McConnell, you're playing all the most popular plays, then you probably don't want to have as much interest in Mo Bamba. But just for me, if you do have a relatively contrarian or at least some lower owned plays in the lineup, then it would be Bamba.
I have Mobley by 0.3 of a point. They're the exact same salary, double the ownership on Bamba. I had a bunch of Evan Mobley before, and I was under the field on Mo Bamba, as I generally am. So I would be going to Mobley, but these guys are, like I said, separated by 0.3 of a point. That's a coin flip. Ownership dictates that decision. Any other centers you're looking at? Guys that I have. I mean, it's all the Drummond. Miles Turner looks pretty good for me now that he has both eligibilities on FanDuel. I'm getting a lot of. Here's a guy that I want to get your take on. We have him at 4% ownership on FanDuel. I'm getting significantly more. What do you do with Jarrett Allen today?
I haven't really thought about Jarrett Allen.
Ownership's updated.
Oh, okay. So screw whatever we're talking about with Jarrett Allen and other centers.
I didn't want to cut you off, but I know you want that.
Yeah, I don't have exposure to Jarrett Allen. Long story short, the contrarian center I like is Clint Capella. I keep banking on those minutes going up, and I think that's coming sooner rather than later. So contrarian center option for me is Clint Capella. But all right, the Philly guys, I'm going to sort it in.
I have to assume that we're going to need another run here. Maxey at 11% feels wrong.
Maybe it's so late though. Like, how many people are making?
That's true. I don't know what to do with that though. Like, who's a better play to you, Tyrese Maxey or TJ McConnell today? They are 5,400 and 5,300 on FanDuel. So,
DK, I prefer McConnell because he's 4,800. FanDuel, it's really close. It would just be a toss up for me. I have really similar projections on them.
McConnell at 24%, Maxey at 11. I think both of those numbers are a little light. I wouldn't be surprised to see both guys climb. But if Maxey's 11, I have a real problem.
Milton's projected for more ownership than I expected.
What's he at?
On DK, he's projected for 17.
5 on FanDuel, and I don't have any. I need to start making some adjustments because, I don't think that Tyrese Maxey's going to be someone I should have in 80% of my lineups. If he's 11% owned, I think I could walk that back a bit. That shouldn't be too difficult, but still getting a ton of TJ, Drummond, Lillard. That's all fine. So nothing wholesale that I need to make a change for, but let's go ahead and make some tweaks to Tyrese Maxey to start. And then I can see what the real trickle down is. I'm going to say that he gets 16% ownership for real.
Paul Reed's projected for no ownership, by the way.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've got 16% of noted shooting guard Paul Reed on FanDuel.
I mean, he's projected for less than 1% ownership on DraftKings. I don't think that's actually what the number is going to be, but just on the chance that he's going to pick up no ownership, now I want to make sure I get to some of him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he picks up a little bit on FanDuel as well, and that's going to limit the amount that I'm actually going to get to. Now I'm just making my tweaks because Jarrett Allen and Robert Williams are the two guys that are like unowned that I'm getting to as like big time pivots of just a bunch of guys in that 6K range that are getting ownership. But I don't think that I need 40% of both of those gentlemen when they are single digit owned, sub 5% owned, in fact.
I would agree that you do not need that much of them. I'm getting to
that John Morant news is coming in like 6 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. I'm getting to less of TJ McConnell than I thought I was going to now. I'd like to have more TJ McConnell that I have. It's just because I'm getting to all of these cheap guys from the Sixers. I mean, I'm still getting to a healthy amount of TJ McConnell, but like I went from having him in 65% of my lineups to 30, and I want to have more of him than that.
All right. I've got Jarrett Allen down a bit now, high 20s. Who the hell else did I say it was? Jarrett Allen, and now I'm just trying to remember because I don't want to check my work. I lost it. Oh, Robert Williams. Son of a bitch. Svi starting.
By the way, we got Svi is starting.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to have to take down Boucher a little bit then. We got a super chat from Charles, and it is a showdown related question. He's saying he's doing a showdown lineup with Drummond at captain. Then should he go with Korkmaz or Thibault as value? He has enough for either. I have Korkmaz projected higher than Thibault, so that's my answer.
Yeah, I would go to Korkmaz over Thibault there. If it's FanDuel, it's a little bit closer just because the things that Thibault does well are nuked on FanDuel, which helps. But otherwise, yeah, it's got to be him on FanDuel. All right. Am I getting more fee now? Yeah, I had to lock him and bump that projection.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you.
How do you feel about him? I guess.
Well, most importantly to me is because I had Chris Boucher starting. I was getting into some exposure of him, and I'm probably going to have like 5 to 10% of Boucher now. Nothing that's like all that substantial now that he's coming off the bench, because I don't know how it's going to impact his minutes. I'm not going to really get to Svi though either. There's just so many plays that I consider to be better values on the Sixers than Svi.
How do you feel about Sabonis? That's somebody that we haven't talked about that I'm getting over the field on.
He didn't really see a massive boost last year when Brogdon was off the court. So he's in my player pool just because we kind of need guys to spend up for now. But I'd rather roster Randall personally. And the guy who really benefited the most with Brogdon off the court last year, it was Miles Turner last year, not Sabonis. So in all of these situations, I've been playing Turner a lot more than Sabonis lately.
Okay. Wow, that is way too much Paul Reed, Josh. 16% doesn't feel all that necessary. All right.
I've got to upload these lineups
here
eventually.
Yeah, 6:53, everybody. If you don't have your lineups in or you are waiting to do something, I would go ahead and get some dummies in as fast as you can. We are coming up on lock, and honestly, this could end up looking all sorts of different ways by the time we get there. We are desperately waiting for news. Nerlens Noel, by the way, ruled out. Not really changing anything for me in terms of like changes that I need to make. I am going to zero him out, but if he were popping up for me, it would be a real problem. So I have what I think are going to be most of my exposures. It's almost full lock button, Andre Drummond, a lot of Maxey, TJ McConnell, Lillard, Sabonis. I'm getting to a bunch of Jason Tatum today. I didn't really expect that, but it's happening. Robert Williams and Jared Allen are two guys that are showing up for me in more lineups than I was totally expecting, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, one thing that gets annoying with some of this late news is there was a bunch of lower owned plays that I liked that I'm just not getting to anymore, and it's going to be disappointing when they have good games. But I mean, obviously, we need to be jamming some of these Sixers values now.
Yepers. All right, I think that whatever I have right now, I have to move forward with as at least my placeholders.
The thing is, though, is that Sixers game starts
man.
The Sixers game starts at 7, so a lot of these spots are about to get locked in for me.
Yeah, the Maxey piece for me is huge. Having Drummond in basically every center spot on FanDuel is an experience.
I mean, in any other year where we're able to get, as much as you and I were not massive advocates for Andre Drummond as a real life basketball player, I mean, any other year where he was 4,400 on DK and 5,300 on FanDuel, that would just be a thing. You'd be like, what is wrong with the pricing algorithm? So if you think of it in that context, I don't have that much issue with it. And he's still been a really good points per minute fantasy producer this year, even if he actually sucks.
Yeah, I have no regrets with it at all. If he busts, I assume it's an injury. Like, even if he plays 20 minutes, like this is a guy that can go for 35 and still be a fully functional piece of your lineup. What you're really trying to dodge, especially on FanDuel, are slate-breaking games from Karl Anthony Towns and Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, or some, like, I mean, there are still some other guys. Like, I think that Clint Capella has slate-breaking upside.
We got another ownership update, if that matters to you.
It does, except probably not enough that I'm going to do anything with it unless it's something really.
I want to look at it. All right, so Korkmaz just jumped on FanDuel to 38% owned.
Okay,
I must don't have that much.
DK then. On DK, yeah, he's 44% on DK, and so here's the biggest ramifications of the latest ownership update. So the Korkmaz, not only did he go to 44% on DK, that brings Jokic all the way up to over 20% ownership from him being a fairly low owned play. Also, TJ McConnell now only 16% owned on DraftKings. That is way, way too low for TJ McConnell at 4,800.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with Korkmaz. I don't want 40% of him, best I can tell. That just feels like a really big number. What are you doing with him?
I'm getting to him a lot on DK, and it's probably not something I'm going to change at this point. I could be wrong. I don't buy he's going to be 44% owned. Maybe that's also just.
I'm with you there, though. That's a quick turnaround.
And it's if the news came out at even 5:30 as opposed to 6:35 with Tobias Harris, I'd feel differently. That's a really big amount of ownership for people to get to on news that broke that late. But maybe I'm just being optimistic because I already have him in a lot of my lineups and I don't want to change anything, which I fully recognize is a little bit of a part of that. Paul Reed's still projecting for no ownership, by the way. I would like that to be the case.
Yeah, you and me both. I have less now than I thought I was going to.
Here's what I assume. I assume that Korkmaz is going to be a little bit less popular and Paul Reed is going to be a little bit more popular than what's projected right now.
Who the hell was I just looking at that I thought was Svi but isn't Svi? Is there another guy with like a name like Svi?
I don't know who else you'd be thinking of.
Some sort of international gentleman. I don't know. All right. We've got 2.5 minutes to go until lock. I'm going to move forward. Like, would you rather have Svi on FanDuel or Furkan Korkmaz? Sorry. That's who I was looking at. Svi and Furkan Korkmaz are the two guys that are confusing me. Furkan Korkmaz was the guy that I was looking at who I didn't end up locking. And now I'm confused by everything that I'm doing. That makes way more sense to me now.
I'd rather have Korkmaz than Svi.
Would you rather have Furkan Korkmaz or Tyrese Maxey?
Maxey.
Okay. I at least feel a little bit better there. All right. Whatever I have right now is going in. 658. That was a scramble, man. It's been a while since we've had to do something like this.
Hey, we're almost 2 full weeks into the NBA season. We're due for this. It's, you get relatively good health this start of the year, and then it goes to shit pretty quick.
This felt like an old school NBA slate, and I'm so happy that my camera's not on, so like I don't have to pay attention to making like eye contact or like looking into the camera or doing any of that nonsense.
I'm happy that I was able to suggest you put the picture of you with the mustache up, and that we were able to actually make it happen.
And now it's just going to be there moving forward. When my camera gets disconnected, that is the new default. So even better. All right, final predictions here. Who breaks the slate?
Andre Drummond, realistically, if I'm going off the board. Here's the guy that I've been convinced of since early today, that this is just gut feeling. It's Clint Capella. And the reason is those minutes are slowly starting to trend up. He's still a guy that I think should lead the league in rebounds and should be a really strong points per minute fantasy producer this year. The minutes just haven't been there this year. He's yet to play over 30 minutes, but we saw him play 29 minutes a game last week. He played 28 minutes last game, and the games just haven't been competitive lately. I think we're going to see a fully unleashed Clint Capella. I still like him as a contrarian option.
659 lineups are in. Final count here, 98.7% Andre Drummond. I got all of the Tyrese Maxey, which I'm very scared about, but at the same time, I'm not mad because I think there's a legit ceiling there. And at 5,400, what am I looking for here? 37 fantasy points? That's not all that far away from where I have him projected for today. So go Tyrese Maxey, go TJ McConnell, go Dame. I love the exposures that I have today. I got to cross my fingers and hope that Paul George stinks. Miles Turner isn't as good. Shea, I need to stink. Reggie Jackson, I need to stink. John Collins, Chris Duarte. We locked. We made it. Cue the news that Marant is out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's what I'm expecting now to really just twist the dials a bit. But I got nothing else. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, by the way, we actually did get over 40% ownership on Korkmaz. Nobody played TJ McConnell on DraftKings. Not nobody, but 15%. That's a lot lower than it was going to be.
I'm going to look quickly on FanDuel to see what we got to. That's wild. What was Korkmaz's price?
Korkmaz, 3,500 on DK.
Okay. Let's see if I can find him quickly. FanDuel does not make this easy. Furkan Korkmaz, 22.6% on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's a much more reasonable number.
Yeah. I got 18%, so now I don't even really care what he does. And I'm pretty happy to have 18 at that point. Drummond, by the way, 64% owned on FanDuel. So there's not a lot of center eligibility to go around after that. Let's get out of here. I want to go eat some gumbo, and I'm going to cross my fingers and go watch the Sixers game. So
let's do it.
Thank you guys for joining us. Please hit that like button on your way out the door. Thank you to Yahoo Sports for being the presenting sponsor. Good luck tonight. Make sure you're following at Awesemo NBA for any late breaking news. Win some money. We'll talk to you later. Adios.